Chapter 605. After killing 3 Primal Core cultivators with 3 fingers, the remaining Primal Core cultivators were so frightened that they did not even dare to breathe loudly. Such a method of intimidation was the true embodiment of the Tianwu continent's rule of respecting the strong. The combat power of the dead Primal Core cultivators represented the 3 levels of early Primal Core cultivators: ordinary, strong, and peak. The first person was disrespectful to Ziqin and deserved to die. However, the last 2 clearly felt fear in their hearts and wanted to submit, but Ziqin still killed them decisively. Such a decisive way of doing things was to tell the other Primal Core cultivators that although Ziqin needed Primal Core cultivators to fight, he did not need just any Primal Core cultivator. My name is Ziqin, the leader of this group. Since everyone has chosen to join, then we will be on the same side in the future. I will also promise to give everyone the rewards they deserve. After tossing all the spirit rings and Primal Core cultivators to Wang Shan, Ziqin turned around and spoke calmly to the group of Primal Core cultivators. From the moment he appeared until now, his expression had always been so calm. "My lord, Lord Ziqin." It was the same sentence he had said when he arrived. Now that he said it, it caused thunderous cheers. Aside from the lack of applause, the cheers surged like waves. The difference between before and after was like heaven and earth. Ziqin waved his hand, and the Primal Core cultivators stopped cheering. They looked at Ziqin with more or less a trace of fear in their eyes. "He is called Wang Qiong. He can give orders on behalf of me. In the future, his words are my words." Ziqin pointed at Wang Qiong, and the latter stepped forward. The Primal Core cultivators called out in unison, "Lord Wang Qiong." Wang Qiong nodded as a greeting. Ziqin then pointed at Wang Shan and said, "He is called Wang Shan. If any of you do not have a Primal Core weapon, ask him for one. In the future, he will be in charge of this." After Ziqin spoke, Wang Shan strode forward with his head held high and his chest puffed out, his expression proud. "Lord Wang Shan," the Primal Core cultivators called out in unison. "Haha, not bad, not bad." Wang Shan looked at the Primal Core cultivators with satisfaction. Then he said, "It's just that your voices are too soft. Come, let's do it again." Because of Ziqin's previous deterrence, the Dan Essence cultivators were like little sheep at this moment. Naturally, they didn't dare to resist, and so they loudly called out, "Lord Wang Shan." Lord Wang Shan. That's a pretty good title. Haha, I'll introduce you to a Lord Bald Donkey next time. Wang Shan laughed. Currently, Ziqin's faction could only be considered a team. Before the first battle, there wouldn't be any important arrangements. Thus, after a simple introduction, the group was disbanded, and everyone was free to move about. However, the prerequisite was that they could not leave this place for more than 10,000 miles. The 20 Dan Yuan experts that Ziqin had brought with him also stayed behind. More than 70 nascent core experts gathered together and got to know each other. When these nascent core experts found out that Ziqin had single-handedly killed the nascent core experts guarding the core formation pavilion, their hearts were filled with shock. On one hand, they were shocked by Ziqin's powerful battle prowess. On the other hand, they were in awe of Ziqin's boldness. He even dared to provoke an overlord faction. Although Wild Wolf was a demonic beast, ever since he could transform into human form, he had many human habits. His residence was also very big. Other than himself, there were other Dan Essence cultivators and Yukong cultivators living here. Ziqin and the others temporarily stayed here before they built their own base. It's been almost a month. The pursuers will be here soon. We have to plan how to defend against the first wave of attack. Early in the morning, Wang Qiong found Ziqin to discuss this matter. "When the monk comes back, we'll plan again. If we have a lot of Dan Essence cultivators, then we'll just flatten them." Ziqin poured a cup of water for Wang Qiong. Wang Qiong nodded and said the first wave of attack should be the weakest. We should be able to defend against it. Before the second wave of attack comes, we have about a month of rest. During this time, we can choose to expand our territory or create our own faction. Oh, right. Have you thought about the name of the faction? I haven't thought of a name yet. Zichen shook his head. We have a lot of resources now, and we have occupied the core formation pavilion. This means that we have an endless supply of Dan essence. We can definitely form an army. As for Yukong, if we recruit him now, we can instantly recruit thousands of cultivators. With our resources, we might be able to do something earth-shattering. So we have to think of a good name for the faction so that it can be passed down through the ages. Wang Qiong said excitedly. Zichen nodded. A faction did need a name, but he wasn't as excited as Wang Qiong. He wasn't that ambitious to create a great faction that could be passed down through the ages. His current thoughts were more simple, and that was to first defend against the Overlord faction's attack. LV Peng hasn't returned yet. Zichen asked. No, he Elder Mo, and the spirit-devouring rats have been looking for a suitable place to set up the formation, Wang Qiong said. The Overlord faction was the super overlord of the Bedlam lands. Zichen wanted to defend against them with just a few dozen primal core experts. That was simply a dream. His greatest reliance, other than his ultimate trump card, the old turtle, was Elder Mo's formation. As the most mysterious formation master, Elder Mo had once said that if he was given enough resources, materials, and time to set up the formation, he could turn the entire Chaos City into ruins in a single day. He could make the 5 Overlord factions disappear from the chaotic battlefield in a single day. Hence, to defend against the Overlord faction, they still needed a formation. But before that, they had to choose a good location to set up the formation. 3 days passed quickly. Suddenly, 2 powerful auras appeared in Wild Wolf's residence. These were the auras of mid-primal core experts. When they sensed these powerful auras, the nearby primal core experts' expressions changed. Haha, we finally broke through. Wild Wolf and Black Winds. Loud laughter rang out in the next moment. After breaking through to mid-primal core, the 2 of them had become the true experts of the Bedlam lands. Even in the inner regions, there were many forces willing to recruit them. When the 2 of them broke through, Zichen's eyes flashed with joy. Clearly, with 2 more mid-primal core experts on their side, it would be much easier to deal with the first wave of attacks. Zichen and Wang Qiong walked out of the room, one after the other. Wang Shan and the others also appeared at the first moment. By the time they arrived at Wild Wolf's residence, the other primal core experts had already arrived. They were congratulating the 2 of them with unconcealable envy in their eyes. Wild Wolf and Black Wind also laughed in response. The 2 of them were feeling very good after breaking through. But when they saw Zichen arrive, the 2 of them withdrew their smiles and respectfully bowed to Zichen before thanking him. Many thanks for your help, Lord. Zichen waved his hand. You're welcome. This is also the reason why you've been training so hard and reached a bottleneck. Seeing Wild Wolf and Black Wind being so respectful to Zichen, the other primal core experts' expressions changed slightly. They had heard that Zichen had killed a mid-primal core expert from an overlord force, and knew that Zichen was very powerful. Now that Wild Wolf and Black Wind had broken through at the same time, they were equivalent to 2 mid-primal core experts. Now that they were facing Zichen, who was in the airborne realm, they should have some thoughts about him. However, the 2 of them were still so respectful to Zichen after breaking through. This caused everyone to be shocked by Zichen's strength. Everyone understood that the reason why the 2 of them were still so polite after breaking through was not because they were grateful, but because they were afraid. Clearly, Zichen still had the strength that made the 2 of them wary. The group of primal core experts was about to leave after congratulating, and Wild Wolf and Black Wind did not ask them to stay. It was obvious that Zichen had something to say to them. Suddenly, a figure flew over from the horizon and shouted from very far away, "Lord Zichen, it's bad." I've discovered an army of Dan Primary Realm cultivators flying in our direction. A Primal Core army. The Primal Core experts, who had not left, changed their expressions. They had known that there would be a battle in the near future, but they did not expect the other party to come so quickly. Zi-Chen's expression also changed when he heard this. Seeing that Zi-Chen was silent, Wild Wolf, who had just broken through, was in a good mood and volunteered. How many people are there? How dare they come to the outer region and behave so atrociously? We'll go and kill them immediately. That's right, my strength has just broken through. I also want to test my strength. Black Wind also nodded. Then he looked at the other Primal Core experts and asked, "Who is willing to go with us to kill the enemy?" Zi-Chan was here, so the group of Primal Core experts naturally did not dare to decline. They all expressed their willingness to go and kill the enemy immediately. Kill the enemy, Wild Wolf, Black Wind. Look at how aggressive you are. Who do you want to kill? Another voice suddenly came from the horizon. Then a golden figure flew over quickly. Wild Wolf and Black Wind, who had reached the middle stage of Primal Core, were furious when they were called directly by their names. However, they suddenly felt that this voice was very familiar. After seeing the figure in the golden light, they knew who it was. It's that bald donkey. He's not dead. The two's expressions immediately turned ugly. Oh, I haven't seen you for a long time, and you've broken through. Not bad, not bad. You can barely exchange a few moves with Lord Zhang with the strength of a middle-stage Primal Core expert. It's really lonely to be lonely. After sensing the aura of the two, the monk's slightly excited voice came from the golden light. The other Primal Core experts did not know what was going on. They all looked at the incoming golden light in surprise. This was because they realized that Yukong was also in the golden light. Yukong dared to be so arrogant, even more arrogant than Zi-Chen. This was the first time they had seen someone like him. The golden light arrived in the blink of an eye. Such speed made the group of Primal Core experts' expressions change slightly. However, after that they saw an extremely shocking scene. An object appeared in Yukong's hand, and a dazzling golden light shot out. The golden light fell and hit Wild Wolf instantly. With a loud bang, Wild Wolf, who had just broken through to the middle stage of Primal Core, was sent flying. Wild Wolf was sent flying with one hit. Such a shocking scene made the group of Primal Core experts' eyes almost pop out. But then Yukong attacked again. Large amounts of golden light scattered, and pure Buddhist power began to surge. With another loud bang, the golden light enveloped Black Wind. The latter was also sent flying without any suspense. Chapter 606. The golden light receded and the monk appeared. He held the demon, subduing pestle, in his hand. He looked up at the sky and sighed. Sigh, it's really lonely to be a master. The monk's appearance was so infuriating. At this moment, everyone had the urge to slap his face with the soles of their shoes. However, when they saw Wild Wolf and Hay Foam being sent flying, this urge was suppressed in the bottom of their hearts. The two who were in a good mood because of their breakthrough had lost their confidence after being beaten by the monk. Their mood was ruined. They pulled long faces and flew over from afar. How many people did you bring back? Zi-Chen looked up at the monk. More than 50. The monk lowered his head and looked at Zi-Chen. The demon, subduing pestle in his hand, flashed. His expression changed, as if he wanted to attack. Zi-Chen nodded and looked at him calmly. The monk finally gave up on attacking Zi-Chen. At this moment, the sound of something breaking through the air came from the horizon. It was the Devil Ape and Zhang Haoyan returning with the other inner core cultivators. More than 100 inner core cultivators. This is really a big deal. After all the inner core cultivators arrived, Wang Shan sighed as he looked at the densely packed inner core cultivators. The others nodded, their faces filled with excitement. More than 100 inner core cultivators gathered. all of them surging with inner core aura. The scene was spectacular. As the leader, Zichen said a few words in the air. After that, Zichen asked in front of all the inner core cultivators, "Who are the people who came this time?" "They are from the 8 forces. 48 inner core cultivators. 8 of them are mid-stage inner core cultivators, and the rest are early-stage inner core cultivators." The monk said directly, not deliberately hiding anything. When the primal core experts in the crowd heard this number, they sucked in a breath of cold air. Especially the 8 mid-stage primal core experts. They were incomparably shocked. It should be known that on their side, there were only 2 mid-stage primal core experts. Zichen nodded. 48 inner core cultivators. This number was still manageable. He then asked, "How long will it take for them to arrive?" 3 days at most. There were less than 3 days before the first battle. Time was of the essence. Therefore, Zichen ordered everyone to prepare for battle. Apart from that, those who did not have pill weapons were all given pill weapons. At the same time, everyone was given a drop of mid-grade liquefied origin energy. A single drop of mid-grade origin liquid was worth 30,000 high-grade origin stones, which was equivalent to several months of their salary. This was obviously an extra gift. Everyone sighed in amazement at how generous this was, and at the same time, their hearts were filled with gratitude towards Zichen. After distributing the liquefied essence, the crowd dispersed. Tyrant led a youth towards Zichen's residence. "Look at the talents I've brought back this time," Tyrant boasted when he saw Zichen. Zichen looked up at the young man. He was slightly plump, had small eyes, and had short hair. He asked with interest, "Talent?" "Of course, a genius among geniuses," the monk emphasized. Then he turned his head to look at the young man and said, "Zhang Tong, demonstrate it for me." "Now," Zhang Tong asked in a childish voice. The monk nodded and then looked at Zichen, saying, "Don't be careless. His attack power is very strong." Apparently, the monk had already informed him of this matter before he came. Zhang Tong instantly took out a long saber that was at the level of an elixir weapon. His right hand gripped the saber's hilt tightly, and the aura around him instantly changed. Swoosh! The sharp saber slashed down in an instant, surging with a terrifying aura. Zichen frowned slightly and raised his hand to block. Golden light flashed between his palms. Boom! A shocking sound came from the room. A surge of energy swept within a 1-meter radius around the 2 of them. Although the 2 of them controlled the range of the energy, well, they were unable to suppress the sound. Such a loud sound made the crowd of Elixir Core Realm cultivators rush out, nervously asking what happened. "It's just an ordinary spar. It's nothing serious. Everyone go back." The monk's voice came from the room. Zichen had already introduced the monk to everyone, and they had also seen the scene of the monk repelling the wild wolf and black wind. Knowing that the monk was on their side, they left one after another. Just as they turned around, an even stronger explosion came from the room. It was deafening, but the crowd of Elixir Core Realm cultivators did not stay. They turned around and left. In the room, Zichen took Zhang Tong's second attack and took 3 steps back. There was a hint of surprise on his calm face. As soon as the second attack fell, the third attack came. Zichen could clearly feel a terrifying energy gushing out from the elixir weapon. This energy was not pure Yuanli, but there was also a powerful soul power in it. This attack could be said to be the attack that Zhang Tong's spirit had reached its peak. As the saber slashed down, the space began to distort and tremble. The destructive aura rippled, and the dazzling saber light illuminated the entire room. Such a powerful attack caused Zichen's expression to change slightly. However, he was not afraid. He lifted his hand and pointed out a finger. The power of his finger bone was activated, and a heart-palpitating aura was emitted from Zichen's finger. Boom! The finger bone and the saber collided, and there was an explosion. The violent energy went beyond the range of the two of them and spread out in all directions. The entire room was the first to be unable to withstand the vibrations of this energy and collapsed with a loud bang. Smoke and dust flew everywhere, and as more energy spread out, the room next to Zichen's also began to crumble. With such a huge commotion, the Elixir Core Realm cultivators naturally could not sit by and do nothing. So they appeared again. Then they saw Zichen block the saber in the hand of an Elixir Core Realm cultivator with a single finger. The Elixir Core Realm cultivators in the outer area were surprised. They wondered why Zichen would want to spar with the Elixir Core Realm cultivator. However, the Elixir Core Realm cultivators who came with the monk were all shocked when they saw Zichen block Zhang Tong's third attack with a single finger. They had seen the power of Zhang Tong's 3 attacks with their own eyes that day. Moreover, the terrifying energy contained in the third attack had directly shattered the spirit weapon. However, Zichen had blocked 3 attacks with the elixir weapon. This was simply unbelievable. What do you think? The monk supported Zhang Tong and showed off to Zichen. Seeing that Zhang Tong had become extremely weak after 3 attacks, Zichen nodded and said, "He is indeed very strong, but he must have used some kind of secret technique. It seems like he can only attack 3 times, but at the critical moment, even 1 attack would be enough, let alone 3 attacks. He is indeed a genius. If you know, then why don't you take out the elixir of treasure?" The monk said. Zichen naturally did not have elixir of treasure on him, but he had the ancient herb king, which was comparable to an elixir of treasure. So Zichen took out the ancient herb king, plucked a leaf, and let Zhang Tong eat it. The latter was a little flattered, but before he could refuse, the monk forced it into his mouth. Then the energy in Zhang Tong's body was restored in the next moment. Zhang Tong, who had been dispirited before, also became energetic at this time, but he was far from recovering to his peak. This was because the vitality of the ancient herb king could not be compared to an elixir of treasure. It was very effective in recovering injuries and energy, but it was obviously a little weak in recovering soul power. Seeing an existence comparable to an elixir of treasure disappear, just like that, the surrounding elixir masters showed a pained expression. Using an elixir of treasure without any reason was simply a great waste. However, the monk did not think so. Instead, he was very proud. "How is it? My eyesight is very good, right? 1 elixir of treasure in exchange for 3 attacks. It is very worthwhile." The monk's words made the other elixir masters have the urge to bang their heads against a wall. An elixir of treasure was worth millions of upper-grade primordial stones, and it was only exchanged for 3 attacks. This was simply a waste to the extent of committing a sin. On average, 1 attack would cost millions of primordial stones. This was not bad. How was it not bad? 1,000,000 primordial stones for 1 attack. With such a sky-high price, one could hire a late elixir master to fight for them. Sure enough, Zichen shook his head when he heard this. This made the elixir masters feel a lot better, thinking that their leader was more reliable. However, after Zichen shook his head, he said, "Using elixir of treasure is not bad, but the effect is not very strong. You should try a mid-grade primordial liquid and a spirit recovery elixir. The effect should be better than elixir of treasure." That's right. After 3 attacks, he only consumed a lot of energy, but he was not injured. He only needs to recover his energy. It is useless to have such a huge amount of vitality. I actually did not understand such a simple principle. The monk suddenly slapped his forehead. "The elixir of treasure is with King Mountain. Go to King Mountain and ask for it." The monk nodded but did not immediately. Instead, he stretched out his hand to Zichen. "What?" Zichen looked at the monk. "Take out the bone knife on your body. Zhang Tong is very good with knives. The bone knife will be more useful in his hands." The monk directly asked for it. The bone knife was obtained by Zichen in the ancient battlefield. It was a product of a king ancient beast. As for its power, it was like the sword tooth of the saber-toothed devil leopard. Under the condition that it was not refined, it had a sharpness and toughness that far surpassed ordinary elixir weapons. The value of such a bone knife was naturally extraordinary. Moreover, it was a product of a king ancient beast. Its value was probably higher than an elixir of treasure. However, Zichen did not hesitate at all and directly took out the bone knife. The bone knife was as white as jade. On its surface, there were natural patterns formed by the body of an ancient beast. They crisscrossed like some kind of heavenly pattern. At first glance, it was obvious that it was not an ordinary item. Moreover, the bone knife was unusually sharp. When the bone knife was taken out, the surrounding elixir masters were all stunned. The sound of inhaling cold air was heard continuously. Moreover, there was obvious envy on their faces. Zhang Tong looked at the bone knife in front of him in shock. He even forgot to take it. It was only after the monk reminded him that he came back to his senses. After taking the bone knife, Zhang Tong thanked him repeatedly. His face was full of excitement and excitement. Obviously, he was very satisfied with the bone knife. Just kill more enemies. Zichen only smiled as the other party kept thanking him. In the blink of an eye, he gave the other party a bone knife and consumed an elixir of treasure. Such treatment made the elixir masters very jealous. Since this place had collapsed, it was naturally not suitable for people to live in. Zichen and the others could only leave and go to other rooms. During this time, Zichen also gave a few stronger elixir masters an elixir each. He also hinted that they must be careful when facing the enemy. Such generous trust made the elixir masters feel very grateful. They secretly swore that they would do their best to work for their master. As for Wild Wolf and Haifeng, who were the first to enjoy the benefits, they had long planned to follow Zichen. The speed of the pursuers was faster than the monk imagined. In just 2 days, the devil ape reported that it had found traces of elixir masters. Chapter 607. It's finally here. Zichen, who had made all the preparations, was calm after hearing the devil ape's report. The real battle with the major forces of the Bedlam lands would begin today. Would the barbarians win and create a major force that could shake the Bedlam lands, or would they fall under the siege of the core essence experts of the other forces? Today would be the day that the curtains would be drawn. More than 100 core essence experts had all appeared and stood behind Zichen. Killing intent surged around them. After enjoying such a great treatment, they naturally had to give it their all in the battle. Soon, a terrifying aura surged from the horizon. Many core essence experts of the 8 forces had already appeared. Zichen and his group stood in the air without concealing their presence. A group of alchemy primordial realm experts flew over with killing intent. However, when they saw the hundreds of alchemy primordial realm experts behind Zichen, they were stunned. How long had it been? It had only been a month, but the barbarians had already recruited a team of core essence experts. Such a speed also shocked the core essence experts of the 8 forces. However, they were only shocked. There was no fear on their faces, because with their powerful senses, they already knew what kind of people these core essence experts were. Among the 100 core essence experts, more than 90% of them were products of the core formation pavilion. Even though there were many of them, they were still ordinary. In terms of combat power, even if the other side had 100 core essence experts, they were still very weak. Barbarians, how dare you offend the 8 forces? Today will be the day you die. The core essence experts of the 8 forces stopped 1,000 meters away. One of them shouted. This was the opening speech. I even dare to offend the overlord forces, let alone you 8 small forces. Zichen snorted coldly in response. At the same time, Zichen transmitted a message to the others. This is our first battle. We must win beautifully and shockingly. 8 mid-stage core essence experts. Me, Monk, Longhu, Zhang Haoyan, the Devil Ape, Haifeng, and Yilang will each block 1. Wang Qiong and the others will hold back the remaining one. Zhang Tong will be responsible for killing him. As for the other 40 early-stage core essence experts, you all go up and beat them up. Zi Qin quickly made arrangements. At this moment, the battle was imminent. Even though the core essence experts were confused, they did not dare to ask too much. Both sides did not exchange any unnecessary words. With a loud shout, an intense battle broke out. Kill! Amidst the heaven-shaking battle cries, a group of core essence cultivators charged together, and the sound of weapons clashing rang out continuously. At the same time, Zi Qin sent a voice transmission to Dan Yuan, who was engaged in a fierce battle. Pull away quickly, in case Dan Yuan self-destructs. The Dan Yuan team quickly separated and rushed towards the horizon. There was a large distance between each other. Behind Zi Qin, Black Wind's expression changed. He seemed to have something to say, but in the end he didn't say anything. The Dan essences in the midst of battle quickly left, leaving only a few black dots on the horizon. Zi Chen's arrangement could indeed prevent the Dan essences from self-detonating and prevent large-scale casualties. But this had to be established on the basis of loyalty and trust. If those core essence cultivators took the pill weapons, essence elixir, and essence stones, then they would leave and fight far away. After that, it was very likely that they would flee with everything because they were afraid of death. In order to boost their morale, Zi Chen had given each of them 10,000 upper-grade primordial stones in advance before the battle. The purpose of this was to make them work harder and more loyal during the battle. However, when their lives were in danger, Zi Chen's encouragement would have the opposite effect. In an instant, casualties appeared in the battle on the horizon. The ones who died were naturally the Dan essences on Zi Chen's side. With such a huge gap in strength, if the Dan essences did not cooperate well, they would be in danger of dying. The trash you recruited will all die. As for you, I will take your heads and hang them high on the city gate tower of Chaos City. A mid-stage Dan essences sneered. Kill! Zi Qin replied coldly. Then he turned into a beam of golden light and rushed towards the mid-stage Dan essences who spoke. Kill! Kill! After that, a series of battle cries rang out. Tyrant and the others also rushed forward, each looking for their own target. You're really courting death. How dare you fight against us when you're merely in the Zephyr realm? There was a hint of disdain in the eyes of the Dan essences on the opposite side. Then, they charged towards the Zephyr realm cultivators. The battle was about to start. Then, they scattered, retreated, and increased the distance between them. The one fighting Zi Qin was a strong cultivator from the Gong family. He had been in the mid-stage Dan essences for dozens of years. His battle strength could be said to be very strong. The Dan weapon in his hand shone brightly. With a powerful aura, he smashed it towards Zi Qin. This smash was full of power. The space twisted and shattered, and a terrifying aura swept out. Clang! But then a blood-red light flashed, carrying a monstrous, murderous aura. It blocked the attack. A sonorous sound rang out in the sky. Dazzling sparks flew everywhere. In the eyes of the Dan essences, it was just flying, but it blocked the attack. What? The Dan essence's expression changed. His face was full of disbelief. The Dan weapon in his hand trembled again, and he smashed it towards Zi Qin. In Zi Chen's hand, the blood-red broken spear trembled. The blood-red light flashed, and it blocked the attack again. After that, a series of sonorous sounds rang out. The two of them exchanged blows faster and faster. In the end, they turned into two beams of light, chasing each other and exchanging blows. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had exchanged dozens of blows. Neither of them had the upper hand. After attacking for a long time without success, the Dan essences could not help but feel impatient. Obviously, this scene was very different from what he had imagined. Before coming, He had thought of all kinds of ways to trample on these barbarians. Before each of these methods, the barbarians would be taken down in one move. But in the situation before him, not to mention being taken down in one move, he could not even suppress them. Everything was evenly matched. Another powerful attack. The two of them retreated. The retreating Dan essences took the opportunity to look into the distance. He wanted to see if the others had defeated the enemy, but after a glance, his expression changed again. He saw that the other Dan essences were also blocked to different degrees. The mid-stage Dan essences from the Ning family had been injured, but his enemy was not the only two mid-stage Dan essences among the barbarians. It was an assassin in the Zephyr plane. In addition, there were two other Dan essences who were sent flying. Their opponents were a monk in the Zephyr plane, and the other was a black ape in the Zephyr plane. How is this possible? Dan essences' eyes were full of disbelief. A mid-stage Dan essences was actually suppressed by an enemy in the Zephyr plane. Such a thing that went against the rules of heaven and earth was already very special if it happened to only one person. But now there were 4 mid-stage Dan essences who were all in the same situation. Boom! Just as Dan essence's expression was shocked, another violent vibration came from the distance. Then there was the sound of someone coughing up blood. Blood splattered in the sky. Could it be that the enemy was defeated? Dan essence's face suddenly brightened up. He quickly retreated, no longer fighting Zeechan head-on. At the same time, he turned his head to look in the direction of the battle. But after a glance, the light on his face froze. He was shocked again because the one who coughed up blood was not a barbarian, but someone on their side. Moreover, the enemy was only a demonic beast in the Zephyr plane. In addition, the other mid-stage Dan essences were more or less suppressed. Only the 2 mid-stage Dan essences from the barbarians still had the upper hand. But these two were also unable to defeat the enemy quickly. Pow! Pow! At this moment, Zeechan rushed up like lightning. Holding the broken spear, he launched more than 10 attacks at Dan essences. Each attack was extremely vicious and powerful, so much so that Dan essences kept retreating while defending. After more than 10 attacks, Dan essences could clearly feel that Zeechan's attacks had weakened. His attacks were no longer as fierce. A hint of joy instantly appeared on his extremely shocked expression because he knew the reason for this. Yuanli. Although these Zephyrs were strong and their battle techniques were powerful and terrifying, far surpassing the average genius, and their battle prowess was comparable to that of Sky Realm cultivators, this could not rule out the fact that they were Zephyrs. As long as they were Zephyrs, the energy in their bodies would not be strong. Compared to mid-stage Dan essences, the energy in the bodies of Zephyrs was almost pitifully small. Even if the two sides were evenly matched in battle, as the battle dragged on, Zephyrs would eventually run out of energy. And when that time came, these Zephyrs would be like vegetables on the chopping board. They could be cut into pieces however they wanted. To compete with a Zephyr in a battle of attrition, although this method of winning was somewhat shameless, facing such a powerful Zephyr, he obviously did not care. Everyone hold on for a while. When they run out of energy, it will be time for us to destroy them. Dan Essences was excited because of this discovery. At the same time, he shared this discovery with the other Dan Essences. After that, a look of realization appeared on each of their faces. The shock from before had turned into joy. Indeed, after finding a way to destroy their enemies, they were prepared for a long battle. From their previous half-attacking, half-defending state, they had completely turned into a defensive state. Of course, the two who were fiercely fighting Hafeng and Wild Wolf were still attacking fiercely. Moreover, because they had just broken through, their strength was still lacking. Therefore, they were in a state of being suppressed. Out of the 8 mid-stage core cultivators, 6 of them chose to defend, which changed the situation of the battle instantly. When Wild Wolf and Black Wind saw this, they widened their eyes in shock, their eyeballs almost falling out of their sockets. These Zephyrs had actually forced the mid-stage Dan essences into a defensive state. This shocked them and made them speechless. In comparison, although the two of them were mid-stage Dan essences, compared to these Zephyrs, they were indeed weak. The battle here had already entered a defensive state and did not seem very intense. In comparison, the battle between the Primal Core early-stage cultivators in the distance was much more exciting and intense. It did not take long for a Primal Core stage cultivator to be killed, and as the battle progressed, the Dan essences of the 8 forces could not withstand the number of opponents. Gradually, there were casualties. Of course, among the Dan essences that died, the most were the normal Dan essences on Zi-Chen's side. Just as Haifeng had predicted, seeing their companions die one by one, fear grew in their hearts under the threat of death. Originally, they had gone to the Dan Pavilion to form their Dan, which was a proof of their fear of death. They would rather give up on breaking through than experience the heavenly lightning tribulation. Therefore, at this moment, this fear was magnified again. After reaching a certain point, they showed signs of running away. In comparison, those who had endured the heavenly lightning tribulation were fiercer and crazier as they fought. Chapter 608. A few mid-stage Primal Core Realm cultivators who had been on the defensive saw this and grinned hideously. They switched from defense to offense, and a powerful aura surged around them. Haha, you've used up all your Yuanli, right? Then die. The cold voice and the maniacal laughter echoed in the air as the mid-stage Primal Core Realm cultivators began to counterattack. But before they could launch a powerful sure-kill attack, the hideous grins on their faces froze and then disappeared. Their faces were filled with shock, because in the next moment, almost all of them did the same thing. They took out their Yuanli and swallowed it, instantly recovering their Yuanli. The Primal Core Realm cultivators were speechless. They thought that their opponents had used up all their Yuanli and could slaughter them next. Who knew that they still had Yuanli? The 8 of them looked at each other from afar, not knowing what to say. Kill them quickly. They were speechless, but Zi-Chen had something to say. His powerful spiritual sense spread out in an instant, covering the people on his side. Then he said coldly, "Kill them in one blow." As soon as he finished speaking, Zi-Chen held the broken spear in his left hand and pointed at Primal Core with his right. This finger move naturally borrowed the power of the finger bone. In the next moment, a terrifying aura surged from his finger. Such an aura made Primal Core's expression change drastically. He let out a loud roar and desperately blocked with his elixir weapon. The elixir weapon emitted a bright light and surged with Primal Core's aura, blocking in front of him. Clang! As Zi-Chen's finger fell, a terrifying energy surged wildly. The elixir weapon in front of him trembled and was knocked out of his hand. At the same time, the finger continued to move forward. After breaking the layers of defensive light shield around Primal Core, it directly pointed at his heart. As the finger fell, a bloody hole appeared on Primal Core's body. Then, the powerful energy surging from the finger also knocked Primal Core away. At this moment, a silver light flashed on Zi-Chen's back. The heavenly thunder wings emitted a bright silver light and appeared. The broken spear that should have been in his left hand was instantly switched to his right hand. At the same time, his body emitted a dazzling golden light. Zi-Chen's body began to emit 3 colors of blood, gold, and silver. That blinding light was like a tricolored sun. His eyes were filled with cold, killing intent. Then, holding his spear, he flapped his wings and rushed up. Dan Yuan's face was already filled with shock after being injured in one strike. However, when Zi-Chen transformed into a 3-colored light and rushed over, Dan Yuan's eyes widened. Then he saw the 3-colored light flash before his eyes. Pooh! A tricolored light flashed, and a human head flew high into the air. Endless blood spurted out from the neck. It was a mid-stage Primal Core cultivator, and he died just like that. After these cold words, Zichun annihilated the enemy in the blink of an eye. At the same time, in a few other directions, Tyrant and the others had also unleashed their ferocious attacks. Buzz! The demon, subduing pestle in his hand, suddenly began to tremble. Pure Buddhist power dispersed from the demon subduing pestle, and then the demon subduing pestle was filled with a powerful aura. Tyrant held the demon subduing pestle and smashed it towards the head of the middle stage primordial core cultivator. Golden light flashed, and the demon subduing pestle smashed down with great force. With a sharp whistling sound, it broke through Dan Yuan's defense and smashed into the opponent's head. With a loud bang, the primal core cultivator was sent flying. After being smashed, he instantly became dizzy and saw stars. Tyrant held the demon subduing pestle and quickly followed up. Then he unleashed another powerful attack with great force. Rumbling sounds kept coming from the sky like the beating of drums. Tyrant struck more than 10 times in a row with lightning speed. Each strike carried great force. Under the continuous attacks, the primal core cultivator could not even put up an effective defense. After a series of fierce attacks, the primal core cultivator's vision turned black, and he actually fainted. Just as he fainted, a destructive force emerged from the demon, subduing pestle, and instantly obliterated his vitality. Another mid-stage primal core cultivator had died. Boom! At the same time, there was also a loud explosion in the direction of the demon ape. A mid-stage primal core cultivator had half of his body shattered by the black rod. Pooh! Monstrous killing intent surged. A sharp sword light flashed, and an arm was detached from the body of a primal core cultivator. This was the most powerful attack of Zhang Haoyin and the others so far. Now that it was suddenly used, it had a clear effect. Longhu roared at the sky. The roar of the dragon and tiger resounded through the air. Then its speed suddenly increased. Just as Dan Yuan was in shock, it rushed in front of him. Then it raised its tiger claws high and slapped at Dan Yuan. Boom! A loud explosion sounded in the sky. The mid-stage primal core cultivator's body was crushed by the tiger claw. At the same time, his powerful vitality was also extinguished. Of the 8 mid-stage primal core cultivators, 3 had died and 2 were injured. In another place, the primal core cultivator that Wang Qiong and the others had joined forces to attack was also injured. Just as the primal core cultivator staggered back, a figure walked out of the void behind him. It was a young man with a bone knife in his hand. The moment he appeared, he quickly slashed 3 times at the primal core cultivator. Sharp blade light flashed, and a terrifying aura surged. The primal core cultivator, who was already injured, was instantly drowned by the 3 consecutive blade lights. When the blade lights dissipated, the primal core cultivator had already been divided into 3 parts. The incomplete corpse fell from the sky. The 4th mid-stage primal core cultivator had died. After the young man killed a primal core cultivator, he quickly consumed primal core liquid and pills to recover his soul power. Then he moved closer to Wang Qiong and the others. In the blink of an eye, he had killed 4 people. The other 4 mid-stage primal core cultivators were also shocked. 2 of them had been chased by the demonic ape and Zhang Haoyin. They were seriously injured and were on the verge of death. After that, Zhang Haojian and the demonic ape increased their strength again. In the surging energy, the 2 of them finally killed their enemies. As for the other 2 mid-stage primal core cultivators, they actually wanted to escape when they saw that the situation was not good. However, under the siege of so many strong cultivators, the 2 of them were also seriously injured and finally died. They did not self-destruct immediately. This was the worst choice in their lives. The 8 mid-stage primal core cultivators were all killed in the blink of an eye. Only a few of them suffered light injuries. This could be said to be a complete victory. The battle in the sky continued. However, the death of the early stage primal core cultivators had not been decided yet. Zichen looked at the sky coldly and said, "Kill them all. Leave no one alive." Aside from Wangshan, the others all charged at the early stage primal core cultivators of the 8 factions. As for Wangshan, he went to pick up the spirit rings and alchemy weapons. All the resources of this group were currently under Wang Shan's responsibility. As they charged forward, Wild Wolf and Black Wind clearly put in a lot of effort. This was because in today's battle, the two of them had seen the strong combat prowess of Zichen's group. Although their cultivations were the highest here in terms of true combat prowess, the two of them could not even rank among the top 5. After today's battle, the two of them were completely convinced. Hence, the two of them charged forward with all their might, using their actions to tell Zichen that they were working hard as well. Seeing that their own mid-stage primal core cultivators had died, the rest of the primal core cultivators no longer had the will to fight. In a short time, they began to collapse. Moreover, everyone's combat prowess was extremely strong. Against the early stage primal core cultivators, it was a complete slaughter. A battle where the 8 factions slaughtered the barbarians quickly developed into a battle where the barbarians slaughtered the 8 factions. In the previous battle, many of the ordinary primal core cultivators on Zichen's side were scared out of their wits by death. They began to flee frantically. The primal core cultivators of the 8 factions were chasing after them. Although the ordinary primal core cultivators were not very strong, their fleeing speed was very fast. The experts of the 8 factions only chased for a while before giving up decisively. After that, they turned back and continued to slaughter the barbarians. As for the escaping ordinary primal core cultivators, after seeing their pursuers leave, they heaved a huge sigh of relief. Seeing their companions die, they were both shocked and scared. Hence, they decisively retreated. A alchemy weapon, a drop of mid-grade primal core liquid, and 100,000 upper-grade primal stones. The expressions on their faces were almost the same. They were all filled with the joy and excitement of surviving a calamity. Selling my life, selling my life. One of the primal core cultivators thought disdainfully. He was afraid of death, and after escaping, he was worried that Zichen and the others would catch up with him. Hence, he sped up and flew into the distance. With his wealth, he could live a comfortable life for a long time. Moreover, he had already thought of his destination, which was the market. There, no one would dare to break the rules and fight in the market. Even if Zichen found them there, he would not dare to do anything to them. Suddenly, a white light flashed in front of one of the primal core cultivators and turned into a white figure. It was a white rat, only 1 meter long. Its intelligent little eyes stared at the other party. "It's you." Dan Yuan's expression changed. He naturally recognized the spirit-devouring rat that followed Zichen. "Everyone else is fighting. What are you doing here?" The spirit-devouring rat asked through telepathy. Its voice was very cold. Dan Yuan's expression changed. He did not answer the spirit-devouring rat's question. Instead, he carefully released his spiritual thoughts. After not sensing the aura of Zichen and the others, he was relieved. "You should be running away. You took the reward, but you want to run away. Sure enough, humans are the most cunning beings. You go back on your words. Cunning and despicable." The spirit-devouring rat spoke again. Its intelligent little eyes had a hint of ferocity. "Damn rat, it's none of your business. Die." Dan Yuan's face was filled with murderous intent. The energy in his body surged. Then he smashed the spirit-devouring rat's head with his elixir weapon. But before his attack landed, he saw the spirit-devouring rat turn into a beam of light and rush towards him. Then it crashed into his body. The spirit-devouring rat was less than 1 meter long. It could be considered a little guy from head to toe. However, when it crashed into Dan Yuan, the latter felt as if he was hit by a mountain. His body was about to fall apart. Boom! Sure enough, in the next moment, Dan Yuan's body exploded with a loud bang. His flesh and blood turned into dust. The power of the spirit-devouring rat's collision was actually comparable to the power of the devil-ape's staff. I'm also very powerful. Seeing the flesh and blood falling from the sky, the spirit-devouring rat was very proud. What Heifeng could think of, Zichen naturally also expected. Fear was human instinct, and greed was human nature. If these two were superimposed, it would naturally create many Danyuan who fled out of fear and greed. Therefore, Zichen had already ordered the spirit-devouring rats to wait in the distance. His purpose was to kill all Danyuan who dared to escape. Moreover, the spirit-devouring rats had extreme speed. Without Danyuan, they could escape smoothly. Chapter 609. The spirit-devouring rat displayed its extreme speed and charged towards the fleeing primal core cultivators, killing them in a frenzy. Its attacks were extremely ruthless, leaving almost no corpses intact. As the number of primal core cultivators it killed increased, its originally intelligent eyes were filled with savagery. There were too many despicable and cunning humans who went back on their word. What made the spirit-devouring rat even angrier was that these humans took the rewards without caring about the lives of their employers. They only had themselves in their hearts. The spirit-devouring rat didn't know how many primal core cultivators had died in the battle, but it was counting the primal core cultivators it had killed. Now, more than 20 had died at its hands, and this number was still increasing. When all the mid-stage primal core cultivators were killed, it was already the end of the battle. When Wang Qiong and the others joined the battle of the early-stage primal core cultivators, a massacre had already begun. Soon the battle was over. The 48 primal core cultivators from the 8 forces were all killed. Not a single one was left alive. Wang Shan was walking among the corpses, cleaning up the battlefield and picking up the primal core cultivators' weapons, spirit rings, and energy primal core cultivators. As for Lu Peng and the others, they were doing a head count, including the primal core cultivators' corpses. As for the surviving primal core cultivators, they had already left to heal their wounds. Zichen stood in the air, calmly watching all this. Behind him, Heifeng and Wild Wolf stood with their heads lowered, not even daring to breathe loudly. After 15 minutes, the head count was over. Wang Shan walked towards Zichen in the air. Before the battle, we had 135 early-stage primal core cultivators. In this battle, 56 died, leaving 46. Among them, 18 are heavily injured, and the rest have light injuries. As for the primal core cultivators from the 8 forces, they were all killed. Not a single one was left alive. As soon as Wang Shan arrived in front of Zichen, he began to report the situation of the battle. After a short pause, he continued, "Among our group of early Dan primary stage cultivators, there are 33 people who are missing. I think they ran away because of fear." Zichen only nodded calmly. Wang Shan glanced at Wild Wolf and Heifeng before turning to leave. Behind Zichen, Wild Wolf and Heifeng broke out in cold sweat from Wang Shan's gaze. This was because among the 33 people who had fled, more than 80% of their core essences had been recruited by the 2 of them. "We were incompetent. Please punish us, sir." Before Zichen could speak, the 2 of them took the initiative to admit their mistakes. Zichen waved his hand and said in a calm voice, "You were just following my orders. I don't blame you for this. Speaking of which, I was too anxious about this. I thought that I could make up for all of this with high treatment, but it seems that it won't work. They accepted the reward from our Lord, but they actually left halfway. This is obviously disloyal and despicable. Let's take some people and chase after them. We must capture these despicable people." Wild Wolf's expression was full of anger. Zichen didn't say anything and just shook his head. The 2 immediately shut their mouths and didn't dare to act on their own accord. Ever since they had seen Zichen's powerful battle prowess, they no longer dared to disobey him. Zi Chen stood in the air and looked into the distance calmly, as if he was waiting for something. A moment later, a white light appeared in his line of sight. It was flying towards him at an extremely fast speed. "That's a spirit-devouring rat." After seeing the figure in the white light, Wild Wolf and Hafing's pupils shrank slightly. The spirit-devouring rat appeared from the horizon and headed straight for Zi Chen. When it got close, it transmitted its voice. A total of 33 escaped core essences have been found. They're all here. The spirit-devouring rat didn't deliberately suppress its transmission, so Wild Wolf and Hafing could hear it. After the spirit-devouring rat finished speaking, a white light flashed in front of it. Then 30 core essences, 30 core weapons, and 30 spirit rings appeared. Wild Wolf and Hafing's expressions changed instantly when they saw the spirit-devouring rat take out these items. They didn't think that Zi Chen had already anticipated this and had already made arrangements for it. And this little rat that looked more like a pet actually had the strength to kill more than 30 core essences. This was truly terrifying. Now, the two of them couldn't help but believe that anything that could follow Zi Chen, even if it was just a flying rat, had extraordinary means. Give these things to Wang Shan. In the future, he'll be in charge of all things related to resources, Zi Chen said calmly. And all right. The spirit-devouring rat nodded and left with these items. Looking at Zi Chen's back, Wild Wolf and Hafing only felt a chill in their hearts. Zi Chen's powerful battle strength had already made them afraid, but now Zi Chen's mental calculation was the real reason why the two of them were terrified. Zi Chen turned around, and his calm eyes fell on the two of them. Then he said lightly, "Go and see how the injuries of those core essences are. Tell them to rest well. The second battle should still be a long time." The two of them nodded and then turned to leave. During this time, they actually didn't dare to look at Zi Chen's eyes. Moreover, the two of them didn't know when their clothes were completely drenched in cold sweat. Everyone left. Even the corpses on the ground were taken care of. Only Zi Chen was still standing in the air, his calm eyes looking forward. That direction was the depths of the Bedlam lands, where Chaos City was located. There were 5 overlord forces there, as well as many other forces, big and small. Although Zi Chen's expression was calm, he was very irritated and annoyed. He originally thought that he could create a force that would make people tremble in fear and become famous in the Bedlam lands. However, in today's battle, this force that could only be called a team had exposed its most fundamental problem, and that was loyalty. Without a group of loyal subordinates, there was no way to fight a battle. So what if he recruited an army of core essences? As soon as the battle started and casualties appeared, there would be core essences who would flee in fear. With such a chaotic situation, not only would they not be able to destroy the enemy, but they would also cause endless panic. Once panic arose, the battle would be equivalent to losing. And today's battle was the most obvious example. If they hadn't killed the mid-stage core essences in the fastest speed and controlled the situation, there would have been more core essences who fled in fear. Zi Chen had once naively thought that by giving them enough rewards and resources, he would be able to make them work for him wholeheartedly and fight for him. However, reality proved that this was just Zi Chen's naive thinking. Human nature was the most complicated and unfathomable thing. Something's on your mind. Wang Xian appeared from afar. She was dressed in white and looked like a fairy. She leaned on Zi Chen's shoulder, her black hair cascading down like a waterfall. No. Zi Chen smiled and hugged Wang Xian. Wang Xian leaned on Zi Chen's shoulder and closed her eyes, allowing the breeze to caress her face. She seemed to cherish this scene very much and didn't speak for a long time. Zi Chen was also silent and looked ahead. After a long time, Wang Xian slowly opened her eyes. She seemed to be talking to herself and said softly, "Back then, when father just became the city lord, there were many who came to join the Wang family of Yunxia City. However, They were all rejected by Father. At that time, there were many experts, and many of them were famous. Father rejected all of them, which made many elders in the family unhappy. They questioned Father and asked him why he did this. In the end, Father only said one sentence and shut their mouths. At that time, Father said that outsiders were unreliable. Instead of wasting resources on them, he might as well use these resources to nurture some reliable core essences. Haha, your father is indeed smart and farsighted. Zichun chuckled. Wang Xian slowly raised her head and looked at Zichun. She said softly, Zichun, you have already done very well. Don't add so much pressure to yourself. At the very least, you have made 100 unreliable core essences believe in you and work for you. Zichun nodded. He could naturally hear the consolation and concern in Wang Xian's words. If he was given enough time, he could also nurture a loyal core essences army. However, it seemed that what he lacked the most now was time. Although he won the first battle and bought enough time for him, he only had 2 months at most. 2 months seemed to be a long time, but nurturing a core essences army was undoubtedly a fool's dream, unless he had 2 years or even 20 years. According to the original plan, Zichun would expand his forces in the next 2 months. At the same time, he would continue to recruit core essences. However, after today's battle, Zichun had to give up on the idea of expanding his forces due to the lack of loyalty. The more core essences there were, the easier it was to cause chaos. Now, Zichun's only hope was to rely on the formation. LV Peng had returned with a piece of good news. He had found a suitable place to set up the formation. The battle with the overlords would be held in the formation. Wang Xian left from the sky to look for LV Peng. Zichun wanted to discuss the formation with her and old Mo. Moreover, time was tight. Therefore, they had to go and scout the terrain immediately. Before LV Peng arrived, a figure flew over from afar. It was Long Hu. Are you worried about the disloyalty of the core essences? Long Hu asked directly. This was the biggest hidden danger in the team so far. There was nothing to hide. Zichun nodded. Long Hu thought for a while and said, I can't give you any advice regarding the current core essences. However, if it's the future core essences, I can guarantee their loyalty. Zichun looked at Long Hu and waited for him to continue. In my inherited memory, there is a way to control the soul. Control the soul. Zichun was shocked. The soul was the most mysterious thing for a cultivator and also the foundation of a cultivator. If there was a problem with the soul, it would mean that there was a problem with the cultivator. In the best-case scenario, the cultivator would suffer from dementia, while in the worst-case scenario, they would die instantly. That's right, it's a soul seed art. Once it's implanted into a cultivator's soul, it's equivalent to controlling the cultivator like a puppet. It can guarantee their loyalty, but... Long Hu paused. But what? Zichun asked. Chapter 610. The art of soul seeds was equivalent to turning humans into puppets, pure battle machines. Their strength would never improve in their lifetime, and they would never be able to reach the peak again. They would only end up dying in battle, but their loyalty was 100%. For Zichun, Long Hu's arrival was a timely piece of good news. It was like giving a pillow when one was sleepy, or a pie falling from the sky, or sending charcoal in snowy weather. There were only benefits to be had. Such a method could solve the problem, but it was against human morality. Although it was almost extinct in the Tianwu continent, it did not mean that it had truly disappeared. It was inevitable for sentimental people to be sentimental. Zichun fell silent and fell into deep thought. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Otherwise, we won't be able to win. Long Hu seemed to know what Zichun was thinking. Loyalty was Zichun's biggest problem at the moment. If this problem was not solved, their temporary team of Dan primary realm cultivators would be destroyed by the factions of the Bedlam land. Zichun did not hesitate for long. He nodded and said, "All right, come with me to the core formation pavilion." When LV Peng arrived, Longhu and Zichen were about to leave. "We'll be back by nightfall tomorrow. The matter of the formation can wait." With that, Zichen disappeared with Longhu. When Zichen and Longhu arrived at the core formation pavilion, the second batch of Dan primary realm cultivators had successfully broken through and were ready to head to Zichen's area. They were both surprised and overjoyed when they saw Zichen. Master is here." The 20 Dan primary realm cultivators were overjoyed. Obviously, they thought that Zichen was here to welcome them. They were extremely excited when they thought that they would be able to obtain a Dan weapon as soon as they broke through, and that they would receive 100,000 high-grade primal stones every year. However, Zichen's expression was the complete opposite of the Dan primary realm cultivators. His face was gloomy. Zichen glanced at Longhu. The latter nodded and flew toward the core formation pavilion. There were already 20 cultivators sitting cross-legged in the pavilion, waiting to break through. "My lord, are you here to receive us?" "My lord, we are willing to serve you. We will not hesitate to go through fire and water for you." The group of Dan origin experts did not notice Zichen's ugly expression. They were very excited and wanted to leave a good impression in front of Zichen. Of course, their goal was naturally to obtain a pill weapon. Zichen's gloomy face slowly relaxed, and a faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He decided to tell these people the truth. "Previously, I recruited a Dan Prime team. There were 135 people, but after the first battle yesterday, only 46 people survived. At first, the group of Origin Dan experts were shocked by the number of experts Zichen had recruited, and their faces were filled with nervousness. They were afraid that Zichen would say that the number of Origin Dan experts was enough and that he no longer needed them. However, when they heard the huge number of casualties, they were stunned and their expressions began to change. "In yesterday's battle, 56 people died on the battlefield," Zichen said. "My lord, there are 135 people in total, and 46 are still alive. It should be 89 people who died in battle." A Dan origin expert summoned the courage to correct Zichen's mistake. "No." Zichen shook his head and said, "Only 46 people really died on the battlefield. The remaining 33 people fled the battlefield because they were afraid of death." When the group of Origin Dan experts heard this, their expressions changed. Obviously, they had understood the meaning of Zichen's words. These 33 Dan Origin Dan experts had fled with their pill weapons. Before the battle, in order to boost their morale, I paid each of them 10,000 high-grade yuan stones in advance, and also gave them an additional drop of mid-grade yuan liquid, Zichen said again. This time, the expressions of the Dan origin experts were completely frozen. While they were shocked by Zichen's generosity, there were also some who were envious of these 33 people. They had actually taken a huge amount of money and successfully fled. However, Zichen's following words completely dispelled their similar thoughts. None of the 33 people who fled left alive. Ignoring the pale faces of the Dan origin experts, Zichen said coldly, "Now, I will give you one more chance to choose. Stay or leave." At the same time, Zichen turned his head and looked at the line of Yukong who were waiting to break through. He said, "I will also give you one more chance to choose. If you want to live the life of an ordinary Dan origin expert, then you can leave on your own after breaking through. If you don't want to live the life of an ordinary Dan origin expert, then join my team. The treatment will be the same as before." After Zichen's words, both the Dan origin experts and Yukong fell into deep thought. Their expressions changed, but no one said anything immediately. Zichen was not in a hurry, either, because Longhu was pacing around the core formation pavilion. Waves of mysterious soul power seeped out of his body and surged towards Yukong. It was a special method of controlling soul power. It was soundless and invisible to the naked eye. Even spiritual thoughts were unable to sense it. It was slowly merging with their souls. 20 Dan origin experts made their decisions, one after another. 15 of them chose to stay. It was obvious that the temptation of Dan weapons and wealth was too great. It would take a lot of courage to give up on Dan weapons and wealth. Zichen nodded. He did not force them, nor did he kill them. He only asked them to leave, but before they left, he warned them to keep the core formation pavilion a secret. The 5 of them nodded and left at a rapid pace. They won't keep it a secret. Once they leave, they will immediately tell us what happened here. Instead of letting them go, it's better to kill them on the spot. Longhu walked over with a cold look in his eyes. It's fine. They will know about the core formation pavilion sooner or later. Zichen shook his head and transmitted his voice. It's done. Longhu nodded and transmitted his voice. I've controlled 20 people in total. That's my limit. They will head to our area as soon as they break through. Zichen nodded. Since the soul seed had been planted, there was no point in staying here. Therefore, Zichen and Longhu left with the 15 Dan origin experts. Because of the 15 Dan origin experts, their speed was greatly reduced. They only returned on the 3rd day. Wild Wolf and Hafing were the first to welcome them. They told them that the injuries of the Dan origin experts had been stabilized. Those with the most serious injuries would recover in a month. After Zichen said a few words, Wild Wolf and Hafing left. Then, Zichen transmitted his voice. Wang Qiong came and took the 15 Dan origin experts away. At the same time, Wang Shan also prepared Dan weapons for them. Zichen didn't return to his room. Instead, he arranged things in the air. Next, Zichen called Tyron over and told him and the devil ape to guard this place. At the same time, he told them that once Wang Qiong and the others were done with their business, they could start the baptism again. During the last period of the ancient battlefield, Longhu had led them to hunt many ancient beasts. It was enough for them to be baptized. There might be less than 2 months left for them. Therefore, they should improve their strength as much as possible during this period. What about you? When will you be baptized? Monk asked. Let's talk about it when I come back. Then Zichen brought Longhu and LV Peng to the place where the formation was set up. 2 days later, Zichen returned. As soon as he returned, LV Peng buried himself in organizing the formation materials. Wang Qiong and the others had already started to be baptized. Monk guarded the place, the devil ape went out to monitor, and the spirit-devouring rats were also at the periphery of the area. They sensed everything with spiritual energy. At the same time, they relied on their natural advantage of spiritual energy to find some mineral veins. Everyone was busy with their own duties until the second batch of enemy Dan origin experts arrived. As one of the main forces of the team, Zichen had already prepared the items for the baptism. As soon as he returned, Zichen visited the injured Dan origin experts. Then he began to be baptized. The blood essence of ancient beasts, elixirs, and precious herbs were placed neatly in layers. A faint fragrance lingered in the air. It was the unique scent of a young girl. It was obvious that Wang Xian had stayed here for a long time. These things were carefully prepared for Zichen. Just the blood essence alone was placed in 4 layers. The lowest layer was the blood essence of ancient beasts. There were more than 10 bottles. Although they were ordinary blood essence, there were still descendants of ancient beasts, such as the little demonic leopard and wolf cub. The second layer was the blood essence of ancient beasts. Although the quantity was small, there were still 8 bottles. Even though the bottles were sealed, they could still feel the ferocious aura from them. 8 bottles of ancient beasts' blood essence would definitely be sold at a sky-high price in the outside world. However, they were only placed in the second layer for Zichen's baptism. There were only 3 bottles of ancient beasts' blood essence on the third layer. However, The ferocious aura that surged from them was extremely terrifying. It actually suppressed the top layer. The blood essence on this layer was from ancient beasts. Once it was placed in the outside world, even the overlords would go crazy for it. However, the blood essence on the third layer wasn't the strongest or the most precious. The truly priceless blood essence was on the fourth layer. It was the blood essence of ancient beasts that was sealed in a white jade bottle. However, at this moment, the white jade bottle was emitting a golden light. Although there wasn't any ferocious aura, there was a divine aura. This was a drop of true ancient beast's blood essence. Moreover, it wasn't an ordinary ancient beast. It was the blood essence of a king of ancient beasts, the Longhu Supreme Beast. Although there was only one drop, the inexplicable power it contained was incredible. This blood essence was the foundation of Zi Chen's baptism. Other than that, there were a few stalks of 10,000-year-old ancient herbs, some blood essence of spiritual creatures, and various other items that could strengthen the medicinal effects. Looking at the extremely loving arrangement of these items, a smile appeared on Zi Chen's face. After that, he threw all the blood essence into the huge crater in front of him. In an instant, the crater emitted a brilliant light. Waves of ferocious aura began to surge, and the sounds of various exotic beasts could be heard. After the blood essence of a supreme beast was thrown in, it was as if a Longhu Supreme Beast had rushed into the crater. After all the blood essence and ancient herbs were thrown in, Zi Chen also entered the crater in a flash. He sat down cross-legged and dived into the bottom of the crater. There was an earth fire at the bottom of the crater. This was the key to melting the blood essence and ancient herbs. At the same time, a figure appeared where Zi Chen was standing. It was the old tortoise in its old form. With a wave of his sleeve, energy surged and instantly sealed the entire crater. Next, it was time for Zi Chen's baptism. No one was allowed to disturb him. Chapter 611. 10 days later, the news of the 8 forces being wiped out reached the depths of the inner region and Chaos City. Such slow efficiency was also because Zi Chen had wiped out all the core essence experts of the 8 forces. Before the experts of the 8 forces arrived, they were arrogant enough to think that they could kill all the barbarians, so they didn't leave anyone behind to pass on the information. The 8 forces had sent a total of 48 primordial core cultivators, and 8 of them were mid-stage primordial core cultivators. Such a powerful team had actually been completely annihilated by the barbarians. When the news reached Chaos City, it caused an uproar. Those barbarians' strength was only in the flight realm. How could they kill so many core essence experts? Immediately, many forces were inquiring about the details of the battle. Soon, the accurate data of that battle spread out. The group of barbarians was indeed at the flight realm. Although their battle prowess was strong, they did not have the strength to kill all the primal core experts. The reason why they were able to kill the enemy was because they had recruited more than 100 primal core experts. In the battle that day, although Zi Chen led his people to kill all the core essence experts of the 8 forces, he didn't kill all the flight realm experts. Moreover, the battle caused a huge commotion, attracting many flight realm experts to watch from afar. As long as one wanted to, they could naturally replay the battle through them. Other than that, all kinds of news spread to Chaos City. This included the various data of the experts of the barbarians. It was even accurate to every single person. The expert from the Shangguan clan guarding the core-bearing pavilion was also killed by a barbarian called Zi Chen. The barbarian was very strong. After killing the barbarian, he also successfully took over the core-bearing pavilion. The first wave recruited 20 primordial core experts, and the second wave recruited 15. The rest of the core essence experts were also recruited by the barbarians at a sky-high price. When the news of the barbarians' high price for recruiting core essence experts reached Chaos City, even the major forces and overlord forces gasped. To recruit ordinary core essence experts, the barbarians actually offered 100,000 high-grade vitality stones, an elixir weapon, and a drop of vitality liquid as a reward. With such a generous offer, even the overlord forces had to think twice before hiring them. At the same time, the major forces were shocked. They were all guessing how many good things the barbarians had obtained in the ancient battlefield this time. The entire Chaos City was in an uproar. Almost all the cultivators and forces were talking about the barbarians. What they were most concerned about was naturally the barbarians' gains in the ancient battlefield this time. In the first battle, the 8 major powers had lost. The experts of their clans were furious. A majestic major power had actually been defeated by the barbarians once again. This was simply a disgrace. However, this battle wasn't without results. They already knew how strong the barbarians were, how many people they had, and how courageous they were. Among the 100 or so primordial core realm cultivators, more than 30 of them were scared away. Clearly, in the face of true death, all external objects were useless. Only life mattered. Moreover, the major factions were also considering that if they sent out more Jindan essences and more mid-stage powerhouses, then perhaps more Jindan essences would be scared away. The barbarians' team would naturally collapse on its own. At that time, with just a few barbarians, no matter how strong their combat power was, they would not be able to resist a super strong Dan Prime team. Moreover, ever since they had faced the barbarians, the 8 major powers had not gained the upper hand even once. The large number of primordial core realm cultivators who had died had already shaken the foundations of the 8 major powers. If they continued to increase the number of primordial core realm cultivators and failed again, then their strength would be greatly damaged. At that time, they would naturally be targeted by the other major powers. However, if they did not exterminate the barbarians, they would not be able to swallow this in their hearts. Moreover, the overlord powers had not made any moves for a long time. This made them helpless and passive. Fortunately, when Zichen and the others left, they had robbed and robbed in the inner regions. As a result, they had offended many major powers. The experts of the 8 major powers decided to lobby such existences to send out troops. Lobbying was much simpler than they had imagined. They only told these major powers some of the things that the barbarians had done in the outer regions. For example, they had recruited an ordinary primordial core realm cultivator at a high price, giving each of them a drop of yuan liquid and generously giving each of them 10,000 high-grade yuan stones before the battle. These all represented resources. Moreover, if the barbarians were willing to take out so many resources, it meant that they must have even more such resources on them. Therefore, these major powers nodded and agreed readily. They were willing to fight for justice and suppress the barbarians who were like bandits. In an instant, many major powers responded and joined the crusade. Among them, there were many who did not have any enmity with Zichen. They were simply interested in Zichen's many resources. Therefore, under the alliance of many major powers, a primordial core team was formed very quickly. This team was very large, with over 100 people. Moreover, the number of mid-stage primordial core realm cultivators among them was as high as 15. This was a true primordial core team. Every primordial core realm cultivator in this team had been nurtured by these major powers. They had experienced heavenly lightning tribulations on their own. Every one of them was much stronger than ordinary primordial core realm cultivators. The formation of such a large-scale primordial core team was almost enough to wipe out all the major powers in Chaos City. Therefore, after they had gathered, they set off towards the outer regions. In the outer regions, because of the magnificent battle that day, the barbarians' morale was very high. When many primordial core realm cultivators heard the details of that battle, they were also extremely shocked by the barbarians' powerful battle strength. Therefore, after that battle, many primordial core realm leaders of major powers took the initiative to give up their own powers and join Zichen. The chaotic lands were already very chaotic. There were primordial core realm cultivators dying in battle almost every day. Therefore, there were many primordial core realm cultivators here. There were also many who were not afraid of death. Moreover, Zichen was offering a sky-high reward. This undoubtedly stimulated the nerves of these primordial core realm cultivators who were not afraid of death. Therefore, after that battle, even more primordial core realm cultivators chose to join. Very quickly, the number of primordial core realm cultivators on Zichen's side broke the 100 mark again. Moreover, there was an endless supply of primordial core realm cultivators from the core formation pavilion. The number of primordial core realm cultivators in the team quickly exceeded the initial 135. Looking at the increasing number of primordial core realm cultivators, the monk's face was full of smiles. His eyes were also filled with longing. He seemed to be able to see the scene when he formed the primordial core realm army. However, very soon, the devil ape brought bad news. The enemy forces had sent primordial core realm cultivators again. They were already on the way. This time, the scale was even larger. There were even more cultivators. What, so fast? The monk was shocked when he heard the news. Only a month had passed, and the enemy primordial core realm cultivators had sent out cultivators again. Clearly, the enemy had started to send out troops after hearing the news of the complete annihilation of the primordial core realm cultivators. This speed was also beyond everyone's expectations. Zichen was still undergoing the baptism. Wang Qiong and the rest had not appeared. However, the enemy primordial core realm cultivators had come without warning. In an instant, the atmosphere became very tense. The monk used the fastest speed to unify the number of primordial core realm cultivators on his side. So far, they had 193 early-stage primordial core realm cultivators on their side, close to the 200 mark. However, less than 30 of them had experienced the heavenly lightning tribulation. How many of them are there? How long will it take for them to arrive? There are 15 mid-stage primordial core realm cultivators and 130 early-stage primordial core realm cultivators. According to the current speed, they should arrive in 6 days. 6 days. In such a short period of time, the monk instantly frowned. Moreover, the 130 early-stage primordial core realm cultivators on the other side had obviously withstood the heavenly lightning tribulation. Their combat power was much stronger than the primordial core realm cultivators on their side. Although they had a slight advantage in numbers, their combat power was almost twice that of the primordial core realm cultivators on the other side. In such a battle, the outcome would be clear at a glance. Continue to pay attention. The monk kept frowning. He was only good at fighting, not management. He did not expect that Zichen and the rest would encounter such a thorny problem right after their baptism. If only Wang Qiong was here, the monk thought to himself. As a natural commander, the monk believed that there was a huge gap between him and Wang Qiong in this aspect. Now he could only pray that the enemy primordial core realm cultivators would arrive later, and that Wang Qiong and the rest would finish their baptism earlier. As if the heavens had spoken, the monk's prayer had moved the true Buddha. The enemy primordial core realm cultivators, indeed, slowed down greatly in the following period of time. With this decrease, their speed was reduced by half. They should have been able to arrive in 6 days, but now they needed 12 days. The monk did not understand the sudden decrease in speed. However, when he saw the increasingly nervous expressions of his primordial core realm cultivators, he understood. Clearly, the reason for the enemy primordial core realm cultivators slowing down was to create pressure. They wanted their primordial core realm cultivators to sense the huge difference in strength between the two sides and choose to flee. This was a psychological attack, and it had to be said that it was very effective. The primordial core realm cultivators on their side also became increasingly nervous. If not for the monk sitting cross-legged in the air and monitoring the surroundings, some of them would have already fled. However, this method only treated the symptoms and not the root cause. It prevented them from fleeing, but if they did not flee, they would not have any combat power left. For days passed in a row, the monk felt increasingly pressured. Furthermore, he did not know how to deal with the situation before him. Finally, on the 5th day, energy fluctuations came from the place where Wang Qiong and the rest were baptized. Strong auras appeared one after another. It was the group of people who had completed their baptisms and appeared one after another. Amidst the intense tremors, Wang Qiong and the rest rushed out from the ground. Their bodies shone with dazzling light. Furthermore, strong auras were released from their bodies. During this baptism, they had refined the essence blood of many ancient beast kings and many ancient beast kings, undergoing another transformation. As a result, their combat power increased by another level. The monk felt the energy fluctuations and was the first to rush over. When he saw that everyone had completed their baptisms, he revealed an expression of wild joy. In just a few short days, he was on the verge of collapse. "You all completed your baptisms. This is really great. What's wrong? Did something happen?" Wang Qiong asked when he felt the intense changes in the monk's expression. The depths sent out more primordial core realm cultivators. Furthermore, there are many of them. Just the middle stage primordial core realm cultivators alone are 15. The monk's words caused the joyful group who had just completed their baptisms to instantly feel the severity of the situation. Is it an overlord faction? To think that they came so quickly. Wang Qiong frowned slightly. Chapter 612. Monk told Wang Qiong about the enemy's elixir essence's movements and situation. Wang Qiong listened carefully, and his furrowed brows slowly relaxed. The enemy's elixir essence had many people and were powerful. They could have used their huge advantage in battle strength to crush them. However, they gave up on this direct and effective method of shock and chose to attack their minds. Although this method was very labor-saving and did not require the elixir essence to make a huge sacrifice, the results were almost the same except for the time it took. This seemed to be a perfect plan, but Wang Qiong saw the problem. Most of the elixir essence on his side came from the elixir formation pavilion. Although they were afraid of death, the elixir essence of the enemy forces were not all brave men. They were also afraid of death. And besides death, they had to consider many more problems. This was because the elixir essence team, formed by the alliance of many forces, did not trust each other and would not have a real leader. Therefore, this team was like a sheet of loose sand. Everyone had their own plans. There was no organization and no discipline. So what if there were many people? Therefore, although the enemy had many elixir essence, they were all scattered and had their own selfish motives. This battle was actually not difficult to fight. After understanding all this, Wang Qiong smiled faintly and asked, "How many more days until the enemy's elixir essence arrives? How's LV Peng's formation? Can it be used? How many elixir essence do we have now?" After saying this, Wang Qiong flew towards the elixir essence gathering place without waiting for Monk to answer. Wang Shan and the rest followed closely behind. Monk was like a little follower. He followed beside Wang Qiong and answered, "Based on the current speed, they should be here in 7 days. LV Peng's formation is only 1/3 complete and cannot be used. Moreover, Zichen said that this formation is used to deal with the overlord forces. As for our side, the number of elixir essence has exceeded 200, but almost half of them have lost their confidence and battle strength." Wang Qiong was surprised that so many elixir essence had been gathered in a short month. He asked again, "Have the 20 special elixir essence that Long Hu mentioned before arrived?" "They have. They have been here for more than half a month. I arranged for the 20 of them to be alone." "What about Zichen?" "He is still undergoing baptism. The amount of blood essence he refined for his baptism is much more than ours. There's even Longhu's blood essence among them. Therefore, the baptism time will be much longer. This time it was Wang Xianer who spoke. She had personally prepared the items for Zi Chen's baptism. Wang Qiong nodded. Since Zi Chen was not around, he would be in charge of this battle. Wang Qiong quickly gathered a group of primal core cultivators. The group of primordial core cultivators gathered, but when they saw that the leader was only a flight realm cultivator, they were all stunned. Among the 200+ primordial core cultivators, more than 100 had never seen Wang Qiong before. Lord Wang Qiong. It was only after the other core tier cultivators spoke respectfully that everyone realized that this was a leader. The leader of the barbarian forces was only at the flight tier. This was something that everyone knew, so no one found it strange. Wild Wolf and Haifeng stood straight behind Wang Qiong, looking like two loyal guards. Wang Qiong swept his gaze across the group of Dan Essence realm cultivators, his cold eyes like blades. The situation was just as the monk had said. Many people had lost their will to fight. They were panicking and their eyes were flickering. I just got the news that the enemy forces have sent primordial core cultivators here again. This was Wang Qiong's opening speech. But I am not surprised because we are enemies. When we fight with enemies, we have to be unscrupulous, not to mention 100+ primordial core cultivators. Even if they sent 500 or even 1,000, I would not be surprised. Wang Qiong's voice got louder and louder and finally became cold. But what surprised me is that after you heard the news, not only did you not feel excited, you were scared and even prepared to escape. Excited. Hearing Wang Qiong's reprimand, many primordial core cultivators were dumbfounded. There were so many enemies here and they were so strong. Once they fought, they would die. Moreover, this was a battle that was impossible to win. Who could be excited? Shouldn't you be excited? Shouldn't you be excited? Each of you is enjoying a sky-high price, enjoying a treatment that far exceeds the primordial core cultivators of the Overlord forces. Don't tell me that you are just sitting back and enjoying the fruits of others' labor. Shouldn't you be working for your employer? Wang Qiong's cold eyes swept across the group of primordial core cultivators, especially those who were panicking. There are more than 200 primordial core cultivators here. This is a huge number, but most of you should know what kind of trash you are. You are ordinary primordial core cultivators that no forces want. At most, you can only take a few hundred cannon fodder to fly in the sky and do some plundering. Moreover, you have to face the danger of losing your life at any time. But what do you get? Nothing. Some of you can't even get a single primordial core cultivator after years of hard work. The group of primordial core cultivators lowered their heads and remained silent. But the treatment that Zi Chan gave you is a primordial core cultivator, 100,000 primordial stones per year, and a drop of primordial core cultivator for free. Such treatment is far better than the treatment of the primordial core cultivators in the Overlord forces. It is even better than the treatment of the primordial core cultivators. But now look at your cowardice. Do you deserve such treatment? Wang Qiong's voice was very loud, almost roaring. Although it was unpleasant to hear, it was the truth. In terms of treatment, they were more than 10 times better than the primordial core cultivators of the Overlord forces, and even better than the primordial core cultivators of the Overlord forces. However, their own strength was not even comparable to the ordinary primordial core cultivators. Wang Qiong's impolite words made many primordial core cultivators unhappy. They were not convinced, but no one dared to refute. You are all primordial core cultivators, but they are stronger than you, but their treatment is not even 1/10 of yours. If they dare to fight with their lives on the line, why don't you dare? Just a mere 100 primordial core cultivators, and you are already scared? You don't even have the slightest bit of fighting spirit and want to run away. Then let me ask you, what are you doing here? Are you here to be our masters? Or are you here to let Zi-Chin give you a sky-high treatment so that you can enjoy your old age here? You are going too far. We are people of the Bedlam lands. We have already seen countless deaths and disregarded them. When we first came here, we naturally came here with the heart to fight. However, we came here to fight, not to die. A bunch of motley crew wanting to fight against the primordial core cultivators of the Overlord forces is clearly courting death. You gave us a sky-high treatment just to send us to our deaths. Suddenly, a voice sounded from the crowd. It was a primordial core cultivator who had arrived later. He was not the only one. The other primordial core cultivators were the same. They had come here with the heart to fight. However, the battles of primordial core cultivators they had seen before were at most 20 people. As for the upcoming battle of hundreds of primordial core cultivators, they had never even heard of it, let alone experienced it. Therefore, when they heard that there were more than 100 primordial core cultivators on the other side, they were all afraid. Wang Qiong looked at the other party and asked indifferently, "When you first came here, we did not force you, right?" "You did not force me. Everything was voluntary. However, I am not willing now. In any case, you did not give me any elixir weapons, nor did you give me any yuan stones. I did not even see the shadow of the so-called yuan liquid. Since I did not take your things, it has nothing to do with you. So goodbye." Primordial core cultivators finished speaking in one breath. He felt more or less magnanimous, and his expression also became arrogant. At the same time, he looked at the other primordial core cultivators beside him and said, "The sky-high treatment they gave you is all a scam. They just want you to die for nothing. You have to be alive to take the sky-high treatment. You have to be alive to spend it. Follow me." The expressions of the others changed and they were hesitant. Wang Qiong smiled faintly and said, "Since you want to leave, fine. We will send you on your way." "There is no need to send me off. I can leave on my own." "Bah! Who do you think you are? Now you want to curry favor with me. What were you doing before?" Primordial core spat at Wang Qiong. "Sending you on your way is to curry favor with you." Primordial core cultivators who had been following Zi-Chin all had strange expressions. Seeing primordial core so arrogant, their eyes were filled with pity. Clearly, primordial core cultivators were thinking too much and did not understand the true meaning of sending him on his way. Primordial core raised his head and puffed out his chest, walking away proudly. He looked around with a strong sense of mockery in his eyes. These idiots are still not leaving? Are they waiting to die? Suddenly, the space in front of him distorted, and a white figure appeared. It was a 1-meter-long white rat. Its small eyes, which were originally very lively, were now filled with ferocity. Seeing the spirit-devouring rat, Primordial Core was suddenly stunned. His arrogant face was also filled with confusion. He did not understand why a rat would appear here. But in the next moment he saw the white rat turn into a beam of light and charge directly at him. In this beam of light, Primordial Core sensed a dangerous aura. His expression changed instantly, but before he could put up an effective defense, the white light had already hit him. Primordial Core felt as if he had been hit by a divine mountain. His entire body was in intense pain, and his consciousness dissipated instantly. Bang! An explosion resounded in the sky. Primordial Core's body was directly smashed into pieces. Blood, flesh, and broken bones splashed in all directions, staining many of Primordial Core cultivators. The other Primordial Cores were all stunned, and their hearts trembled. Primordial Core, who was known as an old monster, was actually smashed into pieces by an insignificant rat. For a moment, many Primordial Cores were shocked. "I did not force you to come here. Everything is voluntary, but I am a force a team. This is not your own garden. You can come and go as you please. Those who disturb the morale of my troops will be killed without mercy, Primordial Core cultivators said coldly. A murderous aura surged around him. His cold gaze swept across, and all the primordial cores lowered their heads, not daring to look him in the eye. In the land of chaos, a few primordial cores die every day. Don't think too highly of yourselves, not to mention primordial cores who are afraid of death. In the eyes of the big forces, you are not even worth anything. At most, you are trash. It is your great fortune that Zichen is willing to recruit trash like you at a sky-high price. Chapter 613. Wang Qiong stood in the air, looking coldly at the core realm cultivators. He was reprimanding them with his flight realm cultivation, and no one dared to refute him. Obviously, he already had the means of a leader. No core realm cultivators dared to speak, although many of them had already made up their minds to leave immediately after the battle. That was for later. At this moment, no one dared to refute Wang Qiong. Wang Shan, Wang Qiong said coldly. Here. Wang Shan stepped forward and said loudly, give the 46 core realm cultivators who survived the first battle Yuan liquefied. They are our warriors. Wang Qiong looked at the 46 core realm cultivators who survived the first battle, and his cold expression eased a lot. Although they knew that Wang Qiong was not reprimanding them, they still felt somewhat uncomfortable. However, in the next moment, Wang Qiong gave them liquefied Yuan liquefied. Obviously, he still cared about their lives. The 46 core realm cultivators were touched and grateful. Most of them had used liquefied Yuan liquefied in the previous battle. They thought that it would be gone after consuming it, but who knew that he would give them a drop? Moreover, they had been injured in the previous battle and had used some expensive and powerful pills to heal their injuries. Just based on these 2 points, they knew that Zichen did not want them to die in battle. Yes, Wang Shan replied loudly. He was about to step forward and distribute the liquefied Yuan liquefied. Suddenly, he thought of something and turned to look at Wang Qiong. He pointed at the core realm cultivators and asked, what about them? Should we distribute the liquefied Yuan liquefied? Them. Wang Qiong snorted coldly and said, distribute the liquefied Yuan liquefied to those who have gone through the lightning tribulation. As for those who came out of the core formation pavilion, just give them to the core warriors. It's a waste to give them the liquefied Yuan liquefied to such trash. 1 drop is worth 30,000 high-grade Yuan stones. Do they really think we are rich? Yes, Wang Shan replied respectfully. The core realm cultivators' faces were ashen. Liquefied Yuan liquefied at the critical moment could save a life, but without it, it was equivalent to losing something that could save their lives. Behind Wang Qiong, the eyes of Tyrant and the others were filled with admiration. In a short moment, Wang Qiong had recovered the low morale. No matter whether these core realm cultivators were angry, humiliated, unwilling, or had other thoughts, they would not run away again. Moreover, when the next battle began, they would not have any problems. After settling the problem, Wang Qiong went to Longhu to discuss the details of the second battle. There were a total of 15 forces that had come to annihilate the barbarians. Just as Wang Qiong had guessed, they weren't united and were in a state of disunity. There were even some forces that had been in conflict with each other. 15 forces meant that there were 15 leaders. Everything they did had to be discussed first. There was no one who could give orders, so they were determined not to make a move unless they could use force. Therefore, before they arrived, they carefully studied the first battle between the barbarians and the 8 forces. From there, they came up with a marvelous psychological attack. They made the inner core cultivators of the barbarians flee madly out of fear. When all the inner core cultivators ran away and only a few barbarians were left, the group of inner core cultivators would attack together and kill the barbarians with lightning speed, seizing their resources. They still didn't know that their marvelous psychological attack had been broken by Wang Qiong's words. The inner core cultivators they sent out did not see any inner core cultivators running away from the barbarians. They thought that the pressure was not great, so they slowed down again. They were supposed to reach the barbarians in 7 days, but they were delayed to 10 days. However, as the days passed, they still didn't get the result they wanted. Just as they were wondering why, an early inner core cultivator suddenly came to report that the inner core cultivator who went out early in the morning to monitor the barbarians did not return on time. Damn it, why is it like this? Were they all killed by the barbarians? This was the 5th inner core cultivator who had disappeared in the past few days. The experts of the various forces were finally angry. After waiting for a day and a night, the inner core cultivators still did not return. The various forces guessed that the other party was really dead. They had been here for a few days, and they hadn't fought a single battle with the barbarians, but they had already lost 5 people. Moreover, their perfect psychological attack didn't scare away a single inner core cultivator. Clearly, it was ineffective. The mid-inner core cultivators of the various forces were the leaders, which meant that they were the 15 leaders. The anger in their hearts finally burned fiercely, and they decided to work together to destroy the enemy. Therefore, after careful discussion, they chose to directly and decisively push through. According to their original plan, the rest of the journey would still take 2 days. However, after rushing at full speed, they arrived at their destination in less than half a day. However, when they arrived with murderous intent, they found that the barbarians had already brought all their inner core cultivators and been waiting for them for a long time. The leader was an unfamiliar youth. Although he was also in the flight realm, he was not the Zichin that they saw in the portrait. I thought you would take 2 more days to arrive. Wang Qiong smiled faintly from 1,000 meters away. Barbarians, today is the day you die, the leader of the inner core cultivators shouted from afar. We will only know who lives and who dies after we fight, Wang Qiong replied coldly. Behind him, close to 200 inner core cultivators surged with murderous intent. You cultivators of the outer forces, let me tell you, these barbarians not only offended us, they also offended the 5 overlords of Chaos City. They have already become the scurrying rats of the Bedlam lands. Now, I will give you a chance to choose. If you leave now, we promise to let bygones be bygones. But if you insist on attacking us, you will die. The inner core cultivators shouted from afar. He thought that when he said that, the crowd would be shocked, and then their bodies would tremble in fear, causing a commotion. Their morale would plummet, and they would all flee madly. However, the truth was that after these inner core cultivators heard that they were indifferent, if there was a change in their bodies, it would be that the murderous intent around them surged even more intensely. Are you stupid? The barbarians have offended the entire Bedlam lands. Don't tell me you want to follow them and become enemies with all the forces in the Bedlam lands? Another inner core cultivator threatened. However, this kind of threat was practically useless, at least for now. After Wang Qiong's previous words and the thunderous methods he had displayed, no one dared to withdraw from the battle at this moment. They had clearly expressed their attitude that this battle would be fought to the death. Damn it, why is it like this? The inner core cultivator cursed in his heart, flustered and exasperated. Although the enemy was a bunch of weaklings, they were still inner core cultivators. Although they couldn't fight one-on-one, they had no problem ganging up on them. In such a battle, if they wanted to successfully kill all the barbarians, they would have to sacrifice a lot of their subordinates. Before they could continue to threaten the barbarians, they discovered that the barbarians had suddenly retreated. Want to run? Impossible, you will all die today. The leader of the inner core cultivator sneered and was about to give the order to chase. Suddenly, several explosions sounded from the ground, and dust flew everywhere. Then, figures rushed out from the ground, emitting powerful auras. There were a total of 10 figures, representing the 10 primordial Dan experts. Each of them emitted a dazzling light that was like a sun. Moreover, Each of them had a destructive aura that caused all the primordial Dan experts to tremble. They soared into the air, with crazy calmness on their faces, and rushed madly towards the enemy inner core cultivators. The moment they heard the explosions, the enemy inner core cultivators thought that there was an ambush. When they saw the 10 of them appear, they thought that they were going to launch a sneak attack. Disdainful smiles appeared on their faces, but when they felt the destructive aura around them, their disdainful smiles froze on their faces. This was because this was not a sign of a sneak attack, but a sign of self-destruction. The 10 inner core cultivators who rushed out and were about to self-destruct without saying a word made the enemy inner core cultivators widen their eyes in shock. If this was a greeting gift from the barbarians, it was too precious and too terrifying. This is self-destruction. Run. Get out of here, quickly. Rush out quickly. The 10 inner core cultivators were about to self-destruct at the same time, so the power was naturally terrifying. The inner core cultivators of the various forces instantly became chaotic. Then there was chaos. Shouts, roars, and curses rang out continuously. The inner core cultivators surged all the inner core energy in their bodies and rushed out in all directions as fast as they could. They were trying to escape the range of the self-destruction of the inner core cultivators. Unfortunately, this was a scene that had been carefully calculated. As soon as the 10 of them appeared, they formed a circle. The aura of the self-destruction of the inner core cultivators would cover a radius of several miles in an instant. No one could escape. A mid-stage inner core cultivator wanted to use his extreme speed and powerful strength to first kill the self-destructing inner core cultivator. However, before he could reach the other party, the destructive aura in the other party's body surged to the limit and then exploded with a boom. When they rushed out from the ground, the 10 of them had activated the destructive energy of their inner core cultivators to prevent the mid-stage inner core cultivators from suddenly being killed. Moreover, when they were prepared in advance, this kind of self-destruction could not be interrupted unless they had Z-Chen's extreme speed. Boom, boom, boom. The 10 inner core cultivators self-destructed one after another. The sound of explosions rang out continuously. Wave after wave of destructive aura rippled and spread out, enveloping all the opposing inner core cultivators within a radius. The void shattered under the destructive aura. Huge black holes appeared in the sky one after another. As the destructive aura surged, shrill screams rang out continuously in the sky. Behind Wang Qiong, all the inner core cultivators were stunned. Their eyes were filled with shock. They had never imagined that Wang Qiong would choose such an extreme method to fight. Making 10 inner core cultivators self-destruct at the beginning was too terrifying. The destructive aura rippled. Screams rang out continuously. Blood rained down and broken limbs fell. The power of the self-destruction of the 10 inner core cultivators was too strong. Everyone wondered if even half of the 100 inner core cultivators would still be alive after the destructive aura dissipated. Originally, they did not have any advantage. However, because of the self-destruction of the 10 inner core cultivators, their disadvantage turned into an advantage. Chapter 614. Those who rushed out of the destructive energy were all primordial core cultivators who were lucky enough not to die. Although they were lucky enough to survive the self-destruction of their primordial core cultivators, they were more or less injured. Poof! Blood sprayed out in the sky. A mid-stage primordial core cultivator rushed out of the destructive energy. He was too close to the self-destructing cultivator, so he was directly hit by the destructive energy, causing him to be seriously injured. As soon as he rushed out, he angrily cursed, "Damn barbarians! I will not let you go. I will not let you go either." A cold voice suddenly sounded in the mid-stage primordial core cultivator's mind. The void behind him suddenly broke open, and the devil ape's tall figure walked out. He held the black rod tightly in his hand. As soon as he walked out of the void, he struck out with a powerful attack. A sharp whistle sounded in the air. The black rod fell down with great force, its speed almost reaching the limit. The mid-stage primordial core cultivator only had time to turn around and look up. Then he looked at the black rod that was already above his head in shock. Pum! The black rod hit the mid-stage primordial core cultivator's body, causing a loud bang. All the primordial core cultivators in the distance looked at this scene in shock. They saw the black rod land on the mid-stage primordial core cultivator's head. A destructive energy swept over him. With a boom, the mid-stage primordial core cultivator's body exploded. A spiritual thought rushed out from the exploded body. This was the mid-stage primordial core cultivator's soul. The devil ape's attack only destroyed the opponent's physical body, but it did not destroy the opponent's soul. But before the soul could escape, the devil ape's second attack landed like lightning. The space trembled again. A terrifying energy surged. The mid-stage primordial core cultivator's soul was instantly shattered by the black rod. A mid-stage primordial core cultivator was killed by the devil ape with 2 rods. This scene shocked everyone. Both the primordial core cultivators and the enemy primordial core cultivators were shocked. Kill. In the distance, Wang Qiong also gave the order. As the cold voice sounded, the primordial core cultivators rushed toward the enemy primordial core cultivators like crazy. All kinds of lights flashed between heaven and earth. A fierce battle broke out. This was a fierce and tragic battle. As soon as the battle started, many primordial core cultivators had already died, and there were sounds of self-destruction from time to time. The primordial core cultivators were not the only ones who were crazy. The enemy primordial core cultivators were also crazy. Boom! The body of a heavily injured enemy Dan Essence Realm cultivator exploded. Knowing that he was going to die, he decisively self-detonated his Dan Essence. The destructive energy directly swept through the 4 Dan Essence Realm cultivators. Kill. The 14 mid-Yuan Dan experts also charged into the crowd and began a wild massacre. Even though Long Hu, Zhang Haotian, Mo Yuan, and the rest were there to stop them, they still managed to gain the upper hand due to their numerical advantage. The desperate, chaotic battle continued. Core essence cultivators were dying almost every second. The chaotic battle in the air continued, but on the ground, another 10 Dan essence experts rushed out. The moment they appeared, they flew close to the ground, leaving the battlefield at the fastest speed possible. Deep underground, Zi Qin, who was undergoing the baptism, was drowning in endless pain. He sat cross-legged in a huge energy bubble. Around him, there were all kinds of ancient beast essence blood, as well as all kinds of precious medicines and spiritual herbs. Below the bubble, there was deep blue earth fire. The earth fire burned fiercely, sending endless heat to melt the essence blood. The bubble blocked the transmission of sound. Only Zi Chen's painful expression could be seen. If one was inside the bubble, they would be able to hear the low growls coming from his throat. Inside the bubble, besides Zi Chen's growls, there were all kinds of beast roars. These were the remnant will of the ancient beasts in the essence blood. They were eroding Zi Chen's powerful spiritual thoughts. As the temperature in the bubble increased, all kinds of essence blood began to melt. Illusory figures of ancient beasts appeared one after another. They pounced on Zi Chen, biting and tearing. Zi Chen's expression became more painful. Around him, up and down, there were all kinds of small ancient beasts. They kept biting and tearing at his body. It felt as if there were tens of thousands of ants crawling and biting on his body. The pain came from all over his body. Ah! The intense pain came wave after wave. Chen couldn't help but growl in pain. Pale, golden blood began to flow out of the pores all over his body. As time passed, the small beasts that were tearing at him slowly turned illusory and dim. Finally, they turned into pure spiritual energy and were absorbed by Chen's body. After the first wave of small beasts disappeared, there was still a second wave. These small beasts were obviously much larger in size, and the consciousness they contained was also much stronger. Under the tearing and biting, more and more light, golden blood flowed out from Chen's body. Chen's pain increased by 30%. If the first wave of small beasts were the descendants of pure-blooded ancient beasts, then the second wave would be the kings of ancient beasts. After the second wave, there would be the third wave of ancient beasts. Finally, there would be the essence blood of dragons and tigers. The third wave of ancient beasts' essence blood was still painful for Chen. The continuous pain almost made him collapse. After the third wave of essence blood was absorbed, Longhu's shadow appeared. Chen was extremely weak at this moment. It was as if he had been fighting for several days and nights. He had reached his limit. He couldn't even refine the essence blood of an ancient beast king, let alone another pure-blooded ancient beast. Moreover, Chen felt that if he continued to be attacked by the pain, he would faint. Longhu rushed out of the essence blood and looked at Chen coldly. The expected scene of Longhu pouncing on Chen didn't happen. It was like a real king standing in front of Chen and looking down at the tiny Chen. Longhu stood in front of him and looked at Chen with contempt. Its expression seemed to be thinking and intelligent. Longhu didn't attack for a long time. While Chen was puzzled, he also felt a little happy. He thought that it wasn't a bad thing that the other party was waiting for him to refine it. However, when Chen's spiritual thoughts landed on Longhu's body, he felt as if he had landed on a lump of iron. He couldn't refine it at all. Longhu was like a solid body without any flaws. How is this possible? Chen's weak face was filled with surprise. He opened his eyes wide and looked at Longhu again. Longhu's mouth moved slightly and gave him a mocking expression. It stood proudly with a look of disdain and mockery. It seemed to be saying, "I'm a supreme beast. How can an ant like you refine me?" Seeing Longhu's expression, Chen was furious. He could even subdue the real Longhu Supreme, let alone a mere drop of essence blood. Moreover, as the strongest perfect body among humans, its height shouldn't be inferior to Longhu Supreme's at all. Therefore, after a roar, Chen increased the strength of the refinement. At the same time, he gathered all his spiritual thoughts and attacked Longhu. Bang! Under the powerful impact of the spiritual thoughts, Longhu's body suddenly trembled. It was originally a whole body, but its body loosened a little. Then, a wisp of energy escaped from its body and entered Chen's body. This was only a wisp of energy, which was equivalent to a drop in the ocean. It was completely negligible. Longhu's expression became even more arrogant and looked at Chen with disdain. However, a smile appeared on Chen's face. Although a drop in the bucket was negligible, he saw some hope. If he could absorb a strand of qi with one attack, then he could absorb even more with a few more attacks. Longhu, who was standing still, would be exhausted sooner or later. Therefore, Chen, who saw hope, began to gather his spiritual thoughts and attacked Longhu again and again. Longhu was also constantly releasing its energy during the attacks. Days passed. Longhu's solid figure slowly became illusory during the attacks. After thousands of attacks, Longhu's body collapsed. At this point, all the essence blood, ancient herbs, precious herbs, and spiritual herbs had melted into liquid and merged together. Under the burning of the earth fire, the liquid made gurgling sounds. Chen was in the middle of the medicinal liquid. All he needed to do was to absorb, refine, and transform. The loud sounds between heaven and earth continued, and the fierce battle continued. However, after the shock of the 10 primordial core experts' self-detonation passed, the battle slowly reached a balanced stage. More than half of the 100 primordial core experts of the opposing forces had died. 5 mid-stage primordial core experts had also died. However, the 10 mid-stage primordial core experts who were still alive chose to join forces and formed a strong battle force. This caused Longhu, the demonic ape, and the others who were preparing to attack them one by one to lose their target. Moreover, they could only hold them back and could not continue to kill them. During this period, Haifeng had directly swallowed a precious pill because he had suffered a fatal injury. He had successfully saved his life. At this moment, he was fighting against the mid-stage primordial core experts with the others. However, they had fewer people than the mid-stage primordial core experts. At this moment, it was already very difficult for them to resist. Moreover, in such an evenly matched battle, the fact that they did not have enough elemental energy to fly was completely exposed. If Wang Shan and the others had not been swallowing elemental liquid, they would have been slaughtered because of the depletion of their energy. Wang Shan, Wang Qiong, Wang Xian Wild Wolf, Haifeng, Zhang Haotian, Longhu, and the demonic ape. The 8 of them blocked the 10 mid-stage primordial core experts. This was undoubtedly a miracle. However, the 8 of them could not hold on any longer and were showing signs of defeat. On the other side of the battlefield, the early-stage primordial core experts on Zichen's side were also beginning to die in large numbers. If it were not for the spirit-devouring rats, Wu Mo, and the others, they would have been defeated and fled. Even so, there were still a few primordial core experts who took advantage of the chaos to escape. This time, the spirit-devouring rats did not have time to catch up with them. The 10 mid-stage primordial core experts suppressed Wang Qiong and the others, forcing them to retreat continuously. At this moment, they could only defend and were unable to counterattack. However, these 10 mid-stage primordial core experts did not dare to casually send out one of them to rescue the other primordial core experts. This was because there was still a person watching them covetously in the dark. Although the other party only attacked 3 times each time, it was still a threat to them. "All of you, stop and come back!" a mid-stage primordial core expert suddenly shouted. When the other primordial core experts heard this, they all stopped and quickly flew over. However, during this time, 2 of them were still killed by the spirit-devouring rats. Soon, the posing primordial core experts had all returned. Among the group of early-stage primordial core experts, only 30 were left alive. However, in Zichen's side, less than 20 primordial core experts had returned. The rest of the primordial core experts either watched from afar or took the opportunity to escape. Chapter 615. There were close to 30 primal core realm experts who took advantage of the chaos to escape. The moment the battle stopped, they picked up the spirit rings, elixir weapons, and energy primal core realm experts on the ground and left quickly without looking back. As for the primal core realm experts in the distance, there were also close to 30 of them. They ignored the escaping primal core realm experts and just watched from afar. They did not choose to escape immediately, but they did not come to help either. The spirit-devouring rat flew back with a dozen other primal core realm experts and met up with Wang Qiong and the others. Seeing the escaping primal core realm experts, Wang Shan was furious. However, he could not stop them because the 10 mid-stage primal core realm experts were staring at them. They only had the power to defend and did not have the power to fight. Naturally, they did not dare to divert their attention to kill others. Haha. The 10 mid-stage primal core realm experts laughed one after another. Each of them had a gloating expression on their faces. This scene was indeed as they had expected. It was originally an evenly matched battle, but because of the word "stop," The distance between them instantly widened. At this moment, there were less than 30 primal core realm experts on the side of the barbarians. On their side, there were more than 40 primal core realm experts, including 10 mid-stage primal core realm experts. The outcome of this battle was already clear. The barbarians would definitely lose. "What else do you have to say before you die?" a mid-stage primal core realm expert said mockingly. "We will not die," Wang Shan said coldly. "Haha, you will not die." The primal core realm experts laughed loudly as if they had heard the funniest joke. The other primal core realm experts also laughed, disdain in their eyes. They could see the outcome of this battle at a glance, but the barbarians actually refused to admit it. "You will not die, but will we be the ones to die?" a primal core realm expert asked with a smile. "You will not leave alive. You will definitely die," Wang Qiong said coldly. "Haha, I think you barbarians are all stupid. You have no advantage in terms of numbers and strength. If you don't die, who will?" Another person said disdainfully, "Of course you will die." A cold voice suddenly sounded, followed by an explosion from the ground. As dust flew, a figure emitting golden light soared into the sky. That figure exuded a powerful aura, giving off an indescribable pressure. When he soared into the sky, the figure was already wearing a black robe when he descended from the sky. However, his black clothes still couldn't block out the endless golden light that surrounded him. He was like a golden armored war god that descended from the sky. Boom! The void was like the earth. As the other party stepped on it, ripples appeared. Then a series of pitch-black cracks appeared under his feet and spread out like a spider web, shattering the void with a single step. Such a powerful force caused the expressions of the core origin stage cultivators to change. However, when they saw the appearance of the golden figure, they all cried out in alarm, "It's you, Zi Chen!" Before they came, they had seen Zi Chen's portrait. He was the leader of the barbarians, but they had not seen him in the previous battle. Seeing Zi Chen appear, Wang Qiong and the others were delighted. Obviously, after the baptism, Zi Chen's battle strength should be stronger. It should not be a problem for him to deal with these mid-stage core origin stage cultivators. They had been relying on Old Tortoise because Zi Chen had released Old Tortoise during the baptism. He said that in times of crisis, Old Tortoise could help them regardless of his status. Zi Chen's appearance, now, saved Old Tortoise the need to act. Their final trump card was still hidden. After quickly scanning the battlefield, Zi Chen communicated with Long Hu telepathically. He understood the whole story as quickly as possible, including the escape of the core origin stage cultivators. Long Hu was very angry about this, so he was the first to inform Zi Chen. The golden light on Zi Chen's body was still flashing. Waves of unstable aura escaped from the surface of his body. The pressure around him was still there. He calmly glanced at the core origin stage cultivators who were watching from afar. Their hearts trembled, and they all lowered their heads. Zi Chen retracted his gaze and looked at the core origin stage cultivators in front of him again. Looking at the 10 core origin stage cultivators in front of him, his face was cold. "Today, none of you will leave here alive," Zi Chen said coldly. "You're just a Zephyr cultivator. What arrogance! Let's see how you're going to kill us today." After Zi Chen's appearance, the mid-stage core origin stage cultivators calmed down. So what if he was the leader of the barbarians? After all, he was just a Zephyr cultivator. He could not be that strong. Moreover, they had 10 mid-stage core origin stage cultivators and 30 early-stage core origin stage cultivators who had resisted the heavenly thunder tribulation. How could they be afraid of a mere late-stage Zephyr cultivator? Spread out and surround them. None of you will survive today. Zi Chen did not say too many harsh words. He only said the last sentence coldly. Behind him, the group of cultivators did not doubt the credibility of Zi Chen's words in the slightest. They chose to trust him unconditionally. They instantly spread out and flew forward, surrounding the 40 primordial core cultivators from all sides. Haha, you're just 20 core origin stage cultivators and 10 Zephyr cultivators. You dare to surround us? Seeing this scene, the core origin stage cultivators did not feel nervous. Instead, they could not help but laugh, their faces full of mockery. But soon they could not laugh anymore, because Zi-Chin, who had not moved before, made his move in the next moment. Silver heavenly thunder wings appeared on his back. Silver light flashed, and his body emitted a brilliant golden light. This time, the gold and silver merged. As he flapped his wings, he turned into a beam of light and rushed toward one of the mid-stage core origin stage cultivators. The speed of the two-colored light reached a limit. Just as the ear-piercing sound was heard in the air, Zi-Chen had already rushed to the mid-stage core origin stage cultivators. Zi-Chen, who had reached the mid-stage core origin stage cultivators, did not stop. Instead, he chose to forcefully crash into the mid-stage core origin stage cultivator. Under a strong force, the mid-stage core origin stage cultivator was instantly sent flying. However, just as he was sent flying hundreds of meters, an explosion sounded in the air. The mid-stage core origin stage cultivator's body suddenly exploded. With one strike, Zi-Chen had blasted apart a mid-stage core origin stage cultivator. The surrounding core origin stage cultivators were all dumbfounded. Even though they had imagined Zi-Chen's various attack methods, they never expected him to choose such a simple, barbaric, and violent attack method. However, such a method was undoubtedly extremely shocking. After this attack, everyone was deeply shaken. Their gazes towards Zi-Chen were filled with awe and respect. Everyone was stunned and remained motionless. Zi-Chen also remained motionless. As for the reason why he didn't move, it was because he was embarrassed. He swore to the heavens that he had only wanted to use his fist to hit the other party. However, after the baptism, his physical strength had increased too much, causing his body to be uncoordinated. Furthermore, he had used the heavenly thunder wings to increase his speed, so he couldn't restrain himself. Therefore, he had charged forward, but he never expected to kill the other party. However, it could be seen that Zi-Chen had gained a lot from this baptism. At the very least, his perfect body had become much stronger. Suddenly, a cold-killing intent came from behind Zi-Chen. It was a mid-stage core origin stage cultivator holding an elixir weapon and attacking Zi-Chen. The two of them were very close. The elixir weapon instantly pierced through Zi-Chen's body. Then, an energy surged out and completely shattered Zi-Chen's body. However, he didn't see a drop of blood flow. The core origin stage cultivator's expression sank. Then, he felt a powerful aura appear behind him. Pum! He felt as if he had been hit by a divine mountain, and a powerful force surged out from it. Then his body flew forward. However, during the process of flying forward, there was still a huge force crazily circulating in his body. When the huge force reached a limit, the core origin stage cultivator's body suddenly exploded, and his soul was destroyed. 2 strikes had killed 2 mid-stage primal core origin stage cultivators. If the first strike was a mid-stage primal core origin stage cultivator who was caught off guard, the death of the collision was just a coincidence. However, Zi-Chen quickly dodged the second strike and killed the enemy with 1 strike. Such continuous and fast movements were enough to show Zi-Chen's powerful combat strength. At the very least, he was several times stronger than before the baptism. Kill! Kill! Shouts rang out again. The other mid-stage primal core origin stage cultivators finally reacted. They all held their elixir weapons and attacked Zi-Chen. Silver light flashed on Zi-Chen's back. The heavenly thunder wings flapped again, and he turned into a beam of 2-colored light, moving in a small area. It was obvious that he was not proficient in controlling his speed. Every time he dodged, he either moved more or less. Fortunately, his speed was very fast, and he was always able to avoid fatal attacks in time. 8 attacks fell one after another. However, except for one that only left a shallow wound on Zi-Chen's body, all the other attacks missed. The expressions of the primal core origin stage cultivators had completely changed. They became extremely shocked. It was unbelievable that a late-stage flight, soaring realm cultivator could be so fast. However, what was even more unbelievable was Zi-Chen's inhuman combat strength. A golden light flashed, and he flashed in front of a mid-stage primal core origin stage cultivator, almost crashing into him. After controlling his speed as much as possible, he pointed a finger at his opponent. Boom! With just a finger, the mid-stage primal core origin stage cultivator's body exploded. Even his soul was destroyed. The only thing that was intact was the mid-stage primal core energy. Killing a mid-stage primal core origin stage cultivator with one attack was already a massacre. Moreover, under such extreme speed, they did not even have time to self-destruct. As for running away, that was even more unrealistic. Therefore, the mid-stage primal core origin stage cultivators were slaughtered one by Zi-Chen under the shocked and terrified expressions of the early-stage primal core origin stage cultivators. Zi-Chen's attack method was extremely simple. It was either a finger or a punch, but it was always a hand. Therefore, after 10 attacks, the world suddenly became quiet. As for the early-stage primal core origin stage cultivators, they had already turned into cold corpses under the powerful combat strength of the demon ape and the others. The second battle ended in a massacre. The barbarians won a complete victory. The dozen or so primal core origin stage cultivators who had chosen to fight with Wang Qiong and the others were full of excitement and pride. In the distance, the more than 30 primal core origin stage cultivators who did not choose to escape or help were all trembling in fear after seeing Zi-Chen slaughter the mid-stage primal core origin stage cultivators. Lord help! Lord help! Chapter 616. The world was silent. Everyone was still in a state of shock. These mournful cries for help seemed so abrupt. Everyone turned their heads, subconsciously, and saw many Elixir Realm cultivators flying towards them. These were the Elixir Realm cultivators who had fled before. At this moment, they were in a sorry state with panicked looks on their faces. There were more than 30 people who had fled, but now there were only a dozen left. However, when they saw that the figure of the great power Danyuan was no longer there, everyone's expression changed. Then, they stood in the air with faces full of disbelief. Further away, many cultivators appeared. At the same time, they were accompanied by angry shouts. However, when they saw what had happened, they were also stunned. It was also a team of Elixir Realm cultivators. There were about 30 of them. The leader was a middle-aged man. When he saw that the battle had ended, his expression changed instantly. At this moment, Zi-Chen's cold eyes fell on the middle-aged man. The two of them looked at each other from afar. The man's pupils shrank. Then he shouted from afar, "Lord Zi-Chen, I'm Wu Lu. We didn't mean to go against you. We just couldn't stand people running away, so we taught them a lesson for you." Zi-Chen didn't speak. He looked at the man calmly. However, there was a hint of doubt in his heart. He seemed to have heard the name Wu Lu somewhere before. "Lord Zi-Chen, now that the deserters have returned, we won't disturb you any longer. We'll take our leave now." As soon as he finished speaking, Wu Lu led the others away quickly before Zi-Chen could reply. "Should we go after them?" Wang Qiong looked at Zi-Chen. A faint smile slowly appeared on Zi-Chen's lips. He finally remembered who this Wu Lu was. He was the leader of Wu Lufeng, who had attacked the market. Back then, the Shangguan clan had destroyed Wu Lufeng, but Wu Lu himself had disappeared. He didn't expect that he would come here a few years later. At that time, Zichen was only at the early stage of the Zephyr Realm. He could only kill cultivators at the late stage of the Zephyr Realm. But now he could kill cultivators at the middle stage of the Elixir Realm. He shook his head. In the end, he gave up the idea of killing Wu Lu and the others. It seemed that they were still useful for now. What about them? Wang Chong's gaze fell on the Dan Yuan who had run away and returned. The hearts of the Dan Essence Realm cultivators trembled as they begged for mercy. Then, each of them swore an oath of loyalty. Kill! Zichen's face turned cold as he spoke. If such a person could escape once, he could escape a second time. There was no need to keep him alive. Yes. The thunderous responses of Wang Shan and the others resounded throughout the area. From their voices, one could tell how furious they were. Therefore, the group of people charged forward, and even Long Hu followed. Then a fierce battle ensued. However, there were only a dozen of them, and a single charge would be enough to deal with them. Clearly, they were not satisfied with killing them. Wang Shan's gaze then fell on those Danyuans who didn't run away or choose to help. A cold light flashed in his eyes. The hearts of these core origin cultivators trembled as they begged for mercy. Not running away in the face of danger is also a form of loyalty, Zichen said calmly. Hearing this, the Dan Essence Realm cultivators were relieved. They quickly thanked him and swore to be loyal. The second battle ended just like that. Zichen's side won a complete victory and killed all their opponents. However, such a great victory also came with a heavy loss. The death count of the Dan Essence Realm cultivators was as high as 150. The problem of loyalty was exposed in front of everyone again. But this time, Zichen clearly didn't hesitate. On the second day, he went to the core formation pavilion with Long Hu. After Wu Lu and the others fled 1,000 miles away, the group slowed down. 10 mid-stage Dan Essence Realm cultivators and 130 early-stage Dan Essence Realm cultivators who had experienced the Heavenly Thunder tribulation died, just like that. There was no one left alive. The fighting power of these barbarians is too strong. All of the cultivators were shocked. The barbarians only represent a place that lacks resources. It doesn't mean that they are all idiots. Since they dared to kill the people of the Overlord forces, they must have something to rely on and have a trump card. Only those arrogant forces think that the people of the world are brainless idiots. They deserve to lose, Wu Lu said calmly. Lord, you mean that they still have a trump card that they haven't used yet? Someone asked curiously. Humph, Wu Lu snorted and said, Zichen and the others really offended the 5 Overlord forces. After killing the people of the Overlord forces, they didn't run back to the barbarian land immediately. Instead, they established a force in the outer region. Naturally, they must have a powerful trump card. And this trump card is definitely not weak. The Overlord forces didn't make a move for a long time. Instead, they let the other forces jump around. Naturally, they wanted to see the barbarians' trump card. However, it seems that their plan failed. In the final battle, Zichen should have turned the tide. Zichen turned the tide. Is he alone? But he's only flying. How could he kill so many mid-stage Dan Essence Realm cultivators? The group of Dan Essence Realm cultivators looked at Wu Lu in confusion. Humph! The fighting power of a Sky Realm cultivator can never be judged by their strength. Moreover, Zichen must have gained a lot in the ancient battlefield to make the Overlord forces jealous and rob them regardless of their status. Wu Lu smiled. Since their combat strength is so terrifying, they should know our goal. Shouldn't we leave? One of them asked. Leave? Why should we leave? Asked Wu Lu. We're brazenly stealing their things. Once Zichen stabilizes himself from this battle, he'll definitely come to kill us. Wu Lu smiled mysteriously. Wrong. We're not stealing. We're helping him. We can be considered his ally. As long as Zichen isn't an idiot, he won't send people to kill us. The major forces had lost once again. They were completely annihilated. The result of this battle seemed to have grown wings and flew towards Chaos City. In the outer regions, Wang Qiong and the others were also preparing for the third battle. The first two battles had only forced the ordinary forces to retreat. The next battle would naturally be against the Overlord forces. If they could even defeat the Overlord forces, their future days would naturally be much better. Furthermore, at that time, it would be time for them to transform from a team to a major force. Before the third battle, the busiest person was naturally LV Peng. He had to use all kinds of formation materials to create a killing formation. This killing formation was prepared for the Overlord forces in the third battle. Using a formation to destroy the enemy was obviously a secret. Therefore, no one would help LV Peng. He had to do everything alone. After this baptism, Zichen had transformed again. His perfect body was one step closer to perfection. His combat power had also increased a lot. However, because his physical strength had suddenly increased too much, Zichen's movements were a little uncoordinated. Therefore, Zichen held the broken spear during the day and kept slashing, hacking, and stabbing at the void. He carefully adapted to the changes in strength this time. At night, he also worked hard to understand the soul seed technique. During the baptism, Zichen had used his spiritual senses to attack Longhu's blood essence thousands of times. After the baptism, he realized that his already powerful spiritual senses had also changed and become more condensed. After knowing that Zichen's spiritual senses had become stronger again, Longhu imparted the soul seed technique to Zichen. The soul seed technique was only a secret technique. One could comprehend it as long as one's soul power was strong. As for whether the person comprehending it was human or beast, there was no difference. The core formation pavilion was like a Dan Yuan base. It could create an endless number of Dan Yuan powerhouses. Therefore, Zichen's team could expand a little every once in a while. In addition, Zichen also gave a lot of resources to the dozen or so Dan Yuan powerhouses who had shown their loyalty through their actions. This allowed two of them to successfully break through to the middle stage. As for the other Dan Yuan powerhouses, he also gave them energy Dan Yuan for them to refine and strive to reach the peak of the early stage. After experiencing two battles in succession, the originally invisible loyalty slowly began to appear. On the 10th day after Zichen comprehended the soul seed technique, he made great progress. After trying to silently control a late-stage Imperial Air powerhouse, Zichen knew that he had succeeded. Longhu was stunned when he heard that he had comprehended the soul seed technique in just 10 days. He could not believe it. After Zichen personally demonstrated it, Longhu had no choice but to believe it. Thus, Zichen personally went to the core formation pavilion to test his results. As a result, he was able to control 5 late-stage Zephyr Realm cultivators. At present, he had only just comprehended the soul seed technique, and 5 people were already at his limit. Although there were only 5 of them, Zichen was still excited. This was because 5 Dan Yuan powerhouses self-destructed at a critical moment. The destructive power that would be formed was unimaginable. Zichen seemed to have ushered in his lucky day. He had just brought back 5 early-stage Dan Yuan powerhouses when he heard Wang Shan shouting from afar to tell him a piece of good news. What? Wang Qiong is going to undergo the tribulation? Zichen was stunned when he heard this. He then looked at Wang Shan. Yes, after the transformation, my brother's strength has finally reached the peak. Just now, he could clearly sense the heavenly lightning tribulation. He can undergo the tribulation at any time. Wang Shan said excitedly, "This is indeed good news. Let's go and take a look." Zichen flew towards Wang Qiong's residence. Back in the barbarian lands, Wang Qiong was the first to break through to the flight realm. Who would have thought that he would also be the first to sense the heavenly lightning tribulation. Once again, he took the lead. Zichen was obviously the last to arrive. After he entered, he found that Monk and the others had already arrived. Everyone had a joyful look on their faces. Obviously, they were all here to congratulate him. "Brother, if father knows that you are going to undergo the tribulation, he will be very happy," Wang Xian said with a smile. Wang Qiong nodded. There was obvious excitement in his eyes. He, of course. From now on, our Wang family will have one more master. Wang Shan chuckled and strode in. Then everyone saw Zichen. "Wang Qiong, the heavenly lightning tribulation is the first tribulation for cultivators. You must be fully prepared." "Don't be careless," Zichen said solemnly as soon as he appeared. Wang Qiong nodded. The others smiled cheekily and did not take it to heart. Usually, when a cultivator at the late stage of the Imperial Air Realm was going to undergo the tribulation, as long as they had a good elixir weapon, they would have more than a 60% chance of success. Wang Qiong had all kinds of resources on him. Naturally, there was no danger in undergoing the heavenly lightning tribulation. "You have been baptized by the blood essence of ancient beasts twice. You must not be careless," Zichen warned again. At the same time, he looked at the others and said, "Also, all of you have been baptized by the blood essence of ancient beasts. Be it in terms of physique or strength, you are far superior to ordinary monsters. Therefore, the difficulty of your tribulation should be increased." Everyone nodded in agreement when they saw how serious Zichen was. Chapter 617. With Zichen's advice, Wang Qiong could be said to be fully prepared. He had already placed 3 alchemy weapons in his spirit ring. He even wore the alchemy weapon battle armor. In addition, he had also taken several ancient herb kings, which were comparable to treasure pills. Zichen and the others had already cleared out the area within 10 li of where Wang Qiong was undergoing his tribulation. It was so clean that not even a bird or a small beast could be seen. Rumble. Thunder rumbled as heavenly lightning descended. It was as if a silver dragon had appeared, bringing with it a vast might. Zichen and the others stood guard in the distance to prevent any unexpected changes from happening. This was the first time he had seen someone undergo the heavenly thunder tribulation. Although the vast heavenly might was fierce and terrifying, it fell down one after another, so there were traces to follow. It was unlike his tribulation, where a terrifying sea of lightning appeared. It was a scene of apocalypse. As the heavenly lightning descended, Wang Qiong used his alchemy weapon to block it. At the same time, he followed Zichen's advice and used the heavenly lightning to temper his body. Seeing the heavenly lightning descending one after another, the relaxed expressions of Tyrant and the others slowly turned serious. What a terrifying, heavenly lightning tribulation! "It's even more terrifying than my tribulation," Wild Wolf exclaimed. As a demonic beast, Wild Wolf could take human form after reaching the primal core realm. However, the might of the heavenly lightning tribulation that he experienced was far stronger than humans. Furthermore, the core formation pavilion was only effective on humans. It was ineffective on demonic beasts. Wang Qiong's heavenly lightning tribulation was indeed very strong. Everyone could sense this and had to take it seriously. Furthermore, Wang Qiong, who was wearing battle armor, suffered heavy injuries several times. He even swallowed a few drops of essence liquefied origin energy and a treasure pill. However, Wang Qiong was well prepared. In the end, he passed the heavenly lightning tribulation without any danger. After successfully passing the heavenly lightning tribulation, Wang Qiong's strength broke through. The essence of the essence energy in his body also underwent a transformation, from the liquefied essence energy to the primal core realm. From now on, Wang Qiong was a primal core realm old monster. In the Savage Land, he was also a famous sect master. Having reached the primal core realm at such a young age, Wang Qiong would naturally cause a huge commotion when he returned to the savage land. After his breakthrough, Wang Qiong's battle prowess had also increased by several folds. He would have no problem fighting a mid-stage primal core cultivator. Ziqin now had another general on his side. Wang Qiong flew back excitedly, and everyone congratulated him. Sigh, I wonder when I can break through to the inner core realm. Tyrant sighed and looked at Ziqin. Once I break through, my combat strength will increase again. I will be the undisputed #1 here. Ziqin ignored the monk's slightly provocative gaze. You've broken through, but we're still waiting to break through. Wang Shan chuckled. Wang Qiong's breakthrough was definitely good news for them. However, there might be more and more good news in the coming days. The reason being that Wang Shan, the tyrant Wu Mo, Zhang Haojian, the demonic ape Long Hu, and the others had all achieved the perfection stage of the wasteland realm. It was highly possible that they would be able to sense the tribulation at the very next moment, allowing them to have a breakthrough. As for Ziqin, after the second baptism, his strength had also increased by leaps and bounds. He was only a small step away from the perfection stage of the wasteland realm. After this small step, he would be at the perfection stage of the wasteland realm, and then he would have to undergo the tribulation of the wasteland realm. However, Ziqin's heart was filled with contradictions. He wanted to break through earlier, but at the same time he wanted to delay it, because the difficulty of his core formation was thousands of times harder than others. Moreover, he had to return to the wasteland before he could form his core formation. Otherwise, he would have no hope of forming his core formation. Since he had successfully broken through, he naturally had to celebrate. However, just as he returned to the encampment, Ziqin saw a familiar figure. LV Peng. He, who was supposed to be setting up the formation, was actually here. Ziqin did not inform LV Peng about Wang Qiong's breakthrough, because they were enough. Moreover, setting up the formation was obviously more important than Wang Qiong's breakthrough. However, now that LV Peng was here, Ziqin thought of a possibility, and his face lit up instantly. At the same time, LV Peng, who had just congratulated Wang Qiong, turned to look at Ziqin and nodded his head. The meaning of the nod was simple and clear. The formation had been completed. In the third battle, they mainly relied on the formation. Now that the formation was completed, they just had to wait for the people from the overlords to arrive. Today is indeed a happy day. Everyone, let's get drunk. It was rare for Ziqin to indulge himself, and the others cheered. Everyone's so-called celebration was naturally roasted ancient beast meat and wine. Although Ziqin and the others had a lot of ancient beast meat, they would not eat it without restraint. This thing was very useful for one's physique and could be used as a resource to nurture one's own forces. However, today's celebration was completely unrestrained. Golden roasted meat dripping with oil was served continuously, and bottles of good wine were placed on the table. The fragrance of the meat and wine filled the air. Everyone ate heartily and drank to their heart's content. Under the influence of the wine, everyone chatted about the past, reminiscing about the past and sighing about the future. Then, for some reason, the topic of their encounter suddenly changed. The fire of gossip burned in everyone's hearts. The most curious thing was naturally the encounter between Ziqin and Wang Xian'er. Hence, everyone asked about it. With regards to their encounter, Ziqin still felt a little awkward. This was because he had made use of Wang Xian'er, who was much stronger than him. At that time, Wang Xian'er was in the true energy realm, while Ziqin was in the true energy realm. She had mistakenly thought that Ziqin was an assassin and wanted to capture him. At the same time, Ziqin was being pursued by the martial ancestors' men. Hence, she mistakenly said that the two of them had an unusual relationship. Furthermore, she even said that Wang Xian'er wanted to kill him out of hatred. At that time, Zichen had successfully made use of Wang Xian, and almost killed her. In the end, he had a conscience and rushed back to rescue her. From there, he discovered a series of things. As a man, he actually made use of a woman to avoid disaster. Zichen naturally could not say such an embarrassing thing. Hence, he said that it was just an ordinary encounter. Everyone jeered and did not believe him. In the end, it was Wang Xian who told them what had happened that day. However, after she told them the whole story, while everyone was shocked, they also felt the danger of the situation. He was only in the true energy realm, yet he was surrounded by true energy realm cultivators and Zephyr realm cultivators. It was already a miracle that Zichen was still alive. Furthermore, Zichen had extended a helping hand to those ordinary people when he was being pursued. His actions were also admirable. Similarly, they were also touched by the simplicity of the ordinary people in the village. Even Wild Wolf, Heifeng, and the other 2 mid-stage inner core realm cultivators were nodding their heads as they looked at Zichen with admiration. After that, it was Miao Kong's turn. Zichen and Miao Kong had known each other for a long time, so there was no need to say much. However, it was his encounter with Wang Shan that made everyone burst into laughter. Heifeng and the rest were also looking at Wang Shan in shock. They did not expect that the young man who liked to swear would have such a history. Furthermore, he called Zichen brother-in-law in order to save his own life. Furthermore, Zichen and Wang Xian did not have that kind of relationship at that time. Obviously, Wang Shan was trying to save his own life. Hence, while everyone burst into laughter, they also lamented that Wang Shan was really a weirdo. Under such circumstances, everyone naturally thought of Wang Shi. He was originally a powerful monster, but unexpectedly he died prematurely, killed by the assassins of the Heavenly Assassins Union. Although they had already taken their revenge in the ancient battlefield, they still felt very sad when they thought about it now. If Wang Shi was still alive, his strength would naturally have reached the great completion of the Zephyr realm. Furthermore, he also had the battle strength to destroy inner core realm cultivators. Today, he could also drink and chat with everyone here. In order to divert the sad mood, the topic of their encounter continued. After that, it was Zhang Haojian and LV Peng. Naturally, there were stories of life and death. What about that monk? Lord Zichen, how did you get to know him? Heifeng asked curiously. We didn't know each other before. We only met in the land of chaos, Zichen answered directly without thinking. Naturally, no one believed him. Furthermore, the others were also curious about the encounter between Zichen and the monk. Haha, let me tell you about this matter. Hearing this, the monk immediately perked up and said loudly, when you guys met Zichen, almost all of you were at a disadvantage. Only I, took advantage of him. Ignoring Zichen's darkening face, the monk laughed and said, because I broke all the bones in his body back then. Hearing this, everyone exclaimed in shock. Bah, you damn bald donkey liar. Back then, I was only in the early stage of the Xiantian realm, but you were in the true energy realm. How dare you say that? Zichen was instantly enraged. Back then, you cheated me of my blazing sword. Now return it to me. Hearing this, Wang Shan's face darkened as well. The blazing sword was snatched from him by Zichen. Having been exposed, Zichen was completely enraged. Then, without caring about his image as the leader, he began to fight with the monk, exposing each other's dirty secrets. Do you still remember that you bought the firmament palm technique? Zichen also began to laugh. He had once used a fake firmament palm technique to trick the monk. Sure enough, it was you. I knew it was you. The monk was furious. The two began to fight, and the things that happened were always so interesting. All right, the past is past. Forget it. I just want to ask, is there really a supreme secret manual in that firmament palm technique? The monk gave up in the end. It seemed that except for the first time when he had a slight advantage, Every time he met Zichen, he would be unlucky. Moreover, he had once thought that Zichen was his nemesis until he came to the land of chaos. I really want to know if there really is a supreme secret manual. Zichen smiled mysteriously. Of course. Back then, the Li family caused such a big commotion. Don't tell me that it was just a firmament palm technique. The monk stared. Actually, it's not a powerful secret manual. It's just a secret technique. But I think the Li family doesn't know what it is, Zichen said. What? Secret technique? The monk's eyes lit up. Then he said impatiently, No, it was originally mine. You have to teach me. Zichen glanced at the monk in disdain and said, It's just a secret technique for body refinement. I've already taught it to all of you back in the ancient battlefield. Everyone was relieved. When the monk heard this, he felt much better. He said, I was wondering why the body refinement technique was so powerful. So it was originally mine. Uft. Damn, monk. I've already taught you the body refinement technique. Now, shouldn't you be more generous and teach me the technique of the Ma-word mantra? And that defensive light shield. Show it to us so that we can study it together. Amit Ba, I still have something to do. I'll take my leave now. The monk put on a solemn look and then turned to leave. Uft. Damn bald monk. Every time we talk about this, you have to run away. Zichen said unhappily. Chapter 618. When the news of the second team's annihilation reached Chaos City, the entire city was in an uproar again. 15 mid-stage primal core cultivators led 130 early-stage primal core cultivators to kill a group of barbarians. But they were all annihilated, apart from the uproar. Even more forces started to inquire about the details of that battle. Very soon, the news of that battle spread to Chaos City. They originally had a high chance of winning, but because of the appearance of the barbarians' leader, Zichen, their victory turned into defeat, and they were all annihilated. When the news of Zichen being able to kill mid-stage primal core cultivators spread, it caused another uproar. The news of Zichen being a sky-level cultivator was no longer a secret. Now that he had repeatedly displayed his powerful battle prowess, it made cultivators even more fearful of sky-level cultivators. When the major forces received the news, they were naturally heartbroken, especially the 8 major forces. They had been continuously fighting the barbarians, and their foundations had been damaged. Large numbers of their powerful cultivators had died, and many other forces were eyeing them covetously. Moreover, the barbarians' battle prowess was simply too terrifying. The 8 major forces naturally didn't dare to send out more powerful cultivators to be slaughtered by the barbarians, and the other major forces that had suffered great losses also didn't make any moves. With such a deep hatred, it was impossible for them to just let the barbarians go. The reason they didn't make any moves was because they were waiting for the other major forces to react. The internal conflict within the Shangguan clan was getting more and more intense. Even though the family leader's son had died, they were forcefully suppressed by the internal conflict within the clan. As a result, the Shangguan clan couldn't take revenge for Shangguan Qixiang very quickly. However, the other 4 major forces didn't have so many concerns. Moreover, the major forces kept losing, and it was time for them to send out their powerful cultivators to destroy the barbarians. No one knew if it was a coincidence or a deliberate discussion. But on the second day after the news reached Chaos City, many primal core cultivators rushed out from the major forces. Their unbridled, killing intent and terrifying auras were also telling the world that they were determined to destroy the barbarians. At the same time, it was also to show the world the powerful forces of the major forces. There were 30 early-stage primal core cultivators, 5 mid-stage primal core cultivators, and the leaders were 2 late-stage primal core cultivators. Moreover, this was just the number of experts sent by one of the overlord forces. There were already 37 of them. As for the other 3 forces, the number of experts that came was exactly the same. There were a total of 8 late-stage primal core experts, 20 mid-stage primal core experts, and 120 early-stage primal core experts. With such a powerful battle force, not to mention exterminating a few barbarians, it was more than enough to conquer the entire barbarian land. Thus, when all the powerful cultivators set off, the entire city of Chaos was in an uproar. By sending out so many experts, it was clear that the Overlord forces wanted to use force to protect their face and dignity. Moreover, their goal was very clear. They wanted to rely on so many experts to annihilate all the barbarians. It had been a long time since such a large-scale battle had occurred in the Fringe. Furthermore, it had been a long time since any force dared to challenge the Overlords. Thus, many cultivators followed the large group from afar out of curiosity and headed towards the outer regions. With so many primordial Dan cultivators following behind them, the Overlords naturally noticed them. However, as the leader of the group, the late-stage primordial Dan cultivator only snorted coldly and ignored them. This time they wanted to completely annihilate a group of barbarians. Moreover, they had full confidence that with so many primordial Dan cultivators following them from afar, after the battle, they would be able to spread the news of this battle and restore the reputation of the Overlord forces. Such a beneficial and harmless matter, why not? The Overlord forces made a great commotion and bravely headed straight for the outer regions. During this time, they didn't even go to the city square, nor did they make any detours. Behind them, more and more cultivators followed. Not only were there many primordial Dan cultivators, but there were also many who had followed them halfway through to join in on the fun. Moreover, the news of the Overlord forces attacking and wanting to annihilate all the primordial Dan cultivators in one fell swoop quickly spread throughout the area. This news even reached the core formation pavilion. As a result, not only did the other primordial Dan cultivators join Zichen's group, but even the primordial Dan cultivators in the core formation pavilion didn't join them one after another. Zichen's primordial Dan cultivators had only expanded to 98 people this time. Among the 3 battles, this was the one with the fewest primordial Dan cultivators, but the enemy they were facing was the strongest. Among these 98 people, Zichen once again gave them a chance to choose whether to leave or stay. In the end, another 18 people chose to leave. The 18 of them left straight away, but in less than an hour, only 2 of them ran back pathetically, claiming that there were other forces in the outer regions that wanted to kill them. Kill them, Zichen said coldly. Then, Wang Shan stepped forward and killed the 2 of them. At this point, Zichen's side only had 80 primordial Dan cultivators. The remaining primordial Dan cultivators were also primordial Dan cultivators who were determined to fight. They could be considered as absolute loyalists. You will be the witnesses of me, Zichen, establishing a force, and also my followers. Your treatment, whether now or in the future, will always be the best. Zichen stood in front of the 80 primordial Dan cultivators and made a promise to them. Most of these primordial Dan cultivators had experienced the previous 2 battles and were no longer looking left and right. Even if they knew that it was the Overlord forces that were coming this time, they were determined to fight. As for the others, they were all desperados who were not afraid of death. They held the crazy thought that they would die sooner or later, so they decided to fight crazily. How long will it take for them to arrive? Zichen asked. 1 more day, the demon ape said. Zichen nodded. Then the group stood in the air, quietly waiting for the arrival of the Overlord forces. On the 2nd day, a strong aura appeared in the sky. It was the primordial Dan cultivators of the Overlord forces that had arrived. Zichen turned around and raised his head, his cold eyes sweeping forward. 8 late-stage primordial Dan cultivators. They really think highly of me. Seeing the 8 people in front, Zichen snorted coldly, a cold smile flashing on his lips. Wang Qiong and the monk stood to the left and right of Zichen. Next to them were Zhang Haotian and the demon ape. Behind them were Wu Mo, Wang Shan, and the others. Behind them were 80 primordial Dan cultivators. Although they were prepared, the primordial Dan cultivators behind Zi Qin still had a change in expression when they saw so many experts from the Overlord forces. However, that was all. After their expressions changed, the craziness on their faces intensified. Some primordial Dan cultivators even had thoughts of self-detonating their primordial Dan. At the same distance of 1,000 meters, the other party stopped. The two sides looked at each other with cold eyes. At the back, many primordial Dan cultivators had already gathered. There were also countless cultivators in the air. These were all spectators. However, there were too many of them. There were already thousands of cultivators in the air, and hundreds of primordial Dan cultivators. Even Wu Lu and the others, who were prepared to take advantage of the situation, quickly followed. They were going to witness this historic moment. That's right, this was historic. Today, regardless of whether the barbarians won or lost, they would be recorded in the history of the chaotic lands. To be able to defeat the major forces twice, they were already history makers. As for today's battle, it would leave a mark in the history books that they had created. Why was it called history? Because with such a huge difference in numbers and battle strength, no one believed that the barbarians could survive. They had come to watch the battle because they wanted to see how the barbarians would be slaughtered. They wanted to see how the Overlord forces would once again maintain their dignity and consolidate their position as the Overlord forces. The two sides were 1,000 meters apart, staring at each other coldly. However, before they could say anything, the Overlord forces had already made their move. The mid-primordial Dan cultivators behind the late primordial Dan cultivators instantly launched their attacks. However, their targets were not Zi Chen and the others, but the ground. Boom! 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 The mid-primordial Dan cultivators shot out powerful energy beams, emitting various colored lights. They landed on the ground, followed by a series of explosions. In the distance, the group of primordial Dan cultivators stared dumbfoundedly at the ground that had been bombarded into a mess. In just a short while, a huge crater with a radius of more than 10 miles appeared on the ground where the primordial Dan cultivators of the Overlord forces were. Smoke and dust continued to rise. Under the surging energy, they looked like earth dragons soaring into the sky. They had learned their lesson from the second battle. They had to guard against any primordial Dan cultivators lying in ambush on the ground and then suddenly self-destructing on the spot. However, when they saw the empty crater, it seemed that they had worried too much. This time, there was no primordial Dan cultivator hiding in the crater. The onlookers who were puzzled came to a sudden realization. They finally understood why the Overlord forces were bombarding the ground. However, they were puzzled again. They did not even have any primordial Dan cultivators lying in ambush. Their numbers and battle strength were far inferior to the Overlord forces. How were the barbarians going to fight this battle? Having resources and primordial stones is not everything. This time, the barbarians did not manage to gather enough primordial Dan cultivators. They will definitely lose this battle. Against a major force, it's simply a massacre. No one will be foolish enough to come here and die. The battle had not yet begun, but the spectators in the distance had already predicted the outcome. Hearing the discussions in the distance, the primordial Dan, cultivator of the Overlord forces, sneered complacently. This was a battle where the outcome could be determined with a single glance. It was also a battle where no miracles would happen. The outcome was already set in stone. After being complacent, it was time to make an opening speech. Then it would be time to kill. This was already the plan that the leader of the Overlord forces had thought of. You guys, however, he had only said 2 words when he noticed that the barbarians on the opposite side suddenly moved. The energy around them surged wildly. Then, each of them took out their primordial Dan cultivators. Their eyes shone with a ferocious light. From the looks of it, they were going to skip the opening speech and decisively attack. Since they wanted to die early, the primordial Dan, cultivator of the Overlord forces, would naturally accompany them. Without waiting for the leader to speak, they also took out their primordial Dan, cultivators. A battle that would be recorded in history was about to begin. The spectators also widened their eyes, afraid that they would miss any details of the fierce battle. The barbarians finally moved. They held their primordial Dan, cultivators tightly. Under the command of their leader, Zichin, they suddenly turned around and fled, frantically fleeing. The spectators were dumbfounded. The primordial Dan, cultivator of the Overlord forces, was also dumbfounded. After all this time, the barbarians were just trying to escape with their primordial Dan cultivators. Moreover, looking at their frantic escape, it was no different from pissing their pants in terror. Chapter 619. Seeing the group of barbarians suddenly running away in a frenzy, the Dan leaders of the Overlord forces were stunned for a moment before a smile appeared on their faces. The choice of the barbarians was in line with their image. They knew that they were no match for the Overlords, and yet they still chose to fight. They were simply brainless fools who were courting death. Running away was the wisest choice. The arrogant and carefree laughter of the Overlord forces reverberated between heaven and earth. The barbarians had annihilated more than a dozen other forces and hundreds of Dan primordial experts. But at this moment, the barbarians ran away without a fight after seeing the Overlord forces. In this way, it naturally showed that the Overlord force was different from the others. Moreover, this scene was more like the Overlord force's prestige, scaring the group of barbarians with fear. The Overlord forces couldn't help but feel a sense of superiority. In order to show their magnanimity as an Overlord force, they didn't immediately chase after the barbarians. They only held their heads high like victorious generals and scanned the barbarians with disdain, allowing them to run away like stray dogs. In the distance, the crowd of spectators couldn't help but boo. This was a battle that was about to be recorded in history, but the barbarians chose to run away shamelessly. Although they knew that this was the best choice for the barbarians, the crowd of spectators wasn't able to enjoy the battle to the fullest. While they were angrily criticizing the barbarians for being shameless, Wu Lu, who was in the crowd, frowned slightly. Clearly, he was very puzzled by the barbarians' actions. Since they wanted to run away, why didn't they run earlier? Instead, they acted as if they were going to fight and ran away at the critical moment. Could there be a deeper meaning behind this? But looking at Zichin and his party, who were using almost all their energy to run for their lives, it didn't seem like there was a deeper meaning behind this. Just as Wu Lu was feeling puzzled, the Overlord forces saw that the barbarians had run far enough and began to give chase. More than 100 Dan primordial experts streaked across the sky like meteors. In addition to their uniform speed, the entire group was very orderly, as if they were a well-trained army of Dan primordial experts. Looking at the barbarians running away in the distance, their messy formation and panicked footsteps were worlds apart from the well-trained Overlord forces. The spectators regretted their decision when they saw the barbarians fleeing in such a sorry state. It would be a blasphemy and an insult to history to record such a trashy group of barbarians in the history books of the Fringe. Moreover, they were extremely doubtful about how such a trashy barbarian team could wipe out several hundred primordial core cultivators from two teams. The pursuit continued, and the distance between the two sides was slowly closing. As for why it was slow and not fast, it was because the Overlords wanted to let them live a little longer. This feeling of chasing after the enemy gave them a sense of pride. As a result, they had allowed the barbarian troops to run for hundreds of miles. Their sense of pride had reached its limit, and the amused expressions of the spectators following behind them slowly turned into impatience. They were extremely eager to see a head-on battle, and not to see the Overlord forces acting cool here. As for the Overlords themselves, they had lost their patience and decided to kill the barbarians. That was because the barbarians in front of them were almost out of energy. Right at this moment, something strange happened in front of them. Danuon, who was fleeing in a panic, suddenly flew down from the sky. It was a huge open space that was more than 10 miles wide, like a huge square. The sudden descent of the barbarians stunned everyone. They all wondered if the barbarians, who had exhausted all their energy, were going to fight a battle to the death with the overlords here, knowing that it was hopeless to escape. But soon they understood why the barbarians had landed here. It was because when the barbarians landed, a colorful teleportation portal suddenly appeared in the center of the open space. It was a large-scale teleportation portal that could accommodate dozens of people at a time. As soon as the barbarians landed, the teleportation portal was activated. As the light changed, the barbarians disappeared. Oh no, it's a teleportation portal. The expression of the Danuon from the Overlord forces changed instantly. Then they no longer cared about their neat formation and flew towards the teleportation portal at extreme speed. However, their speed was obviously slower. By the time they reached the teleportation portal, the colorful light had already dimmed and the portal had disappeared. The group of people did not know anything about teleportation portals. Naturally, they did not know how to activate the teleportation portal. Just as they paused for a moment, the other Danuon from the Overlord forces also flew over and landed in the vicinity of the teleportation portal. Damn it, this bunch! One of the leaders said angrily. It was obvious that this was the barbarians' plan. But before he could finish his sentence, something strange happened. Heaven and earth changed in an instant. Rumbling sounds could be heard from all directions. Rays of brilliant light appeared from the ground, one after another. Among the brilliant light, there was a murderous intent that made one's heart tremble. Oh no, this is... The expressions of the Danuon from the Overlord forces changed. After a cry of surprise, they flew towards the sky. But in the next moment, the void began to distort and a psychedelic light flashed. In less than 3 breaths, the killing array had been activated and trapped all the Danuon from the Overlord forces. When the crowd of spectators who came later saw this scene, they all widened their eyes in shock. A scheme, everything was a scheme. A few miles away, the light of the teleportation portal flashed again. Zichin and the rest appeared. Their panicked expressions had already turned icy cold, and the disorderly ranks had also become orderly. As for the severe exhaustion from before, they had all recovered after swallowing the liquefied origin energy. The formation in front of them had been activated. A murderous intent surged. The cultivators who were far away from the formation could feel this murderous intent. As for the group of Danuon inside the formation, they must have felt it even more deeply. This is a killing array. Heavens, there are actually people on the barbarians' side who know how to set up a killing array. This is too scary. They actually used a killing array to trap more than 100 Danuon. Shocked voices could be heard from afar. The barbarians, who were already trash in their hearts, had now become dangerous figures. They had both strength and cunning. This was really scary. The killing array had only been activated. It had not started killing yet. The crowd of spectators could still see the situation of the Danuon from the Overlord forces through the killing array. The 8 late-stage, primal, core cultivators were trying to break out of the formation. They kept rising into the air. In their eyes, the sky seemed to be very far away. No matter how they rose into the air, they could not reach the sky. Moreover, the murderous intents were closing in on them. They did not have much time left. They were racing against time with the formation. They wanted to rush out of the formation as fast as they could before the formation was activated. Outside the formation, in the eyes of the spectators, the 8 Danuon experts were circling in a small area. Each of them was flying in a circle. The size of the circle was the same. Moreover, The 8 late-stage Danyuan experts who showed the fastest speed were also flying at about the same speed. This caused the spectators to think that they were drawing circles at a uniform speed. Moreover, they did not look tired at all. As for the 20 mid-stage Danyuan experts, they stood in the air. Their bodies were emitting a bright light. At the same time, they held up light shields one after another. They made all kinds of defenses, as if they were defending against some kind of attack. The 20 of them were more normal. They did not do anything extreme. When they looked down at the 120 early primal core cultivators, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. This was because they had started fighting. The radiance of the Danyuan weapons were shining brightly. Everyone was holding on to the Danyuan weapons and attacking with what they thought to be powerful attacks. At the same time, they had a crazy and ferocious expression on their faces. When they were attacking, they were saying something ruthless. The killing array blocked out all sounds. Only the flashing of the lights could be seen. However, there were still many spectators who could make out some simple words from the mouths of the Danyuan experts. That was barbarians, Dai. Barbarians? Where were the barbarians? They were clearly their own people. However, they did not know that. Therefore, they all started to attack. Amidst the bright lights, all kinds of attacks collided with each other. Then they exploded into balls of colorful lights like fireworks. More than 100 Danyuan experts from the Overlord forces started to kill each other. Fresh blood splattered everywhere. Amidst the flashing of the Danyuan weapons, there were also broken limbs flying. In the intense battle, there were casualties among the early-stage Danyuan experts. This is not only a killing array. There is also an illusion array. An astonished cry of surprise completely awakened the crowd of spectators who had fallen into a sluggish state. After waking up from their stupor, they turned their gazes towards the group of barbarians. However, all they saw was coldness and surging killing intent. The coldness in everyone's heart increased. At this moment, they deeply felt the terror of the barbarians. As I expected, Zichun did have a deep meaning. This is the real Zichun. When he was running away in a panic, it was just a facade. Wu Lu was also deeply shocked by the scene in front of her. Obviously, the killing array had not been activated yet. It was just an illusion array. However, all the Danyuan experts had fallen for it. The 8 late-stage Danyuan experts were still drawing circles at a uniform speed. The 20 mid-stage Danyuan experts were also trying their best to resist something. The energy around them had been pushed to the limit. Each of them was emitting light like small suns. Below them, the early-stage Danyuan experts were falling one by one. They couldn't hear anything, but they could tell how fierce the battle was when they saw the dazzling radiance erupting from the continuous contact of the lights. And as time passed, this kind of battle reached a white-hot level. As a result, the already crazy Danyuan experts made an even crazier decision. That was to self-destruct their Danyuan. Under the clear observation of everyone, a severely injured, early-stage Danyuan expert suddenly had a sinister look on his face. Then his body started to emit light. This light was even brighter. Chapter 620. Boom! A deafening explosion rang out from the killing array. The body of the primordial core realm cultivator exploded, and a destructive energy surged out in all directions. The destructive energy engulfed the 5 primordial core cultivators. Their expressions changed drastically as they frantically tried to escape. However, the speed of the destructive energy was even faster. Only one of them managed to escape while the other 4 fell to the destructive energy. An earth-shattering explosion and a terrifying energy fluctuation instantly spread through the array. The first ones to react were the 8 late-stage primordial core realm cultivators who were drawing circles at a uniform speed. They had been flying for a very long time. With such a long time, they could even reach a height of tens of thousands of miles, let alone fly to the sky. After sensing the energy fluctuation, their expressions all changed. They knew that they had fallen into an illusory formation, so they all stopped and allowed the illusory, killing formation above their heads to envelop them. Behind Ziqin, LV Peng said calmly, "The energy produced by the self-detonation of core essence is too strong. The late-stage primal core realm cultivators have already sensed it. This illusory formation should be broken soon." This was an illusion array that was added to the killing array. Its power was not as strong as a pure illusion array. Once a late-stage inner core cultivator understood it, the illusion array would be broken. Sure enough, a powerful aura suddenly surged around the late-stage primal core cultivator who had been motionless in the illusory formation. Then he released a powerful spiritual sense and rushed in all directions. Boom! Boom! Wherever his spiritual senses passed, it was as if small worlds were being blasted open. Sounds of tremors came from the illusory array and spread to the outside world. At this point, the illusory formation had been broken. The 30 mid-stage primal core cultivators who had been in a defensive state also woke up. However, as they looked around, their expressions changed drastically. In the sky, the 8 late-stage primal core cultivators also frowned. The original 120 Dan essence cultivators were now looking at each other in disbelief. Some of them were injured, and some had suffered fatal injuries. Looking at their feet, there were corpses lying on the ground. Moreover, in a short period of time, more than a dozen essence core cultivators had already died. While these primordial core cultivators were shocked, they also looked at each other. Clearly, they already understood what had happened. The illusory array had been broken, but the killing array still existed. However, the people inside and outside the array could still see each other. The group of core primes looked up and saw Ziqin outside the array, his face cold. Behind him, a group of core primes surged with killing intent. The previous act of showing weakness to the enemy and fleeing in a sorry state was clearly a deliberate scheme. The ultimate goal of the barbarians was to lure them into this killing array. "Barbarians, you are truly despicable." A cold voice rang out from within the formation. "You're in the late stage of the primal core realm, yet you're here to deal with me. You're the despicable ones, aren't you?" Ziqin responded coldly. The late-stage primal core cultivators gathered their subordinates and scanned the surroundings with cold eyes. Then a mocking smile appeared on their lips as they shouted, "Do you think you can kill us with a mere matrix?" "We'll know once we try." Ziqin's voice was still cold. As soon as Ziqin finished speaking, he saw the group of Dan primes move. They turned into streaks of light and rushed in all directions. Clearly, they wanted to take the opportunity to rush out of the killing array before it was activated. Seeing everyone's behavior, Ziqin's lips curled into a disdainful sneer. Buzz! In the next moment, the killing array began to tremble. Psychedelic light appeared, and a monstrous killing intent surged from the array. The void distorted, forming a light shield that isolated the world, instantly trapping the group of Dan primes in the array. No. Seeing that freedom was close at hand, they all let out roars of unwillingness. At the same time, the yuan qi in their bodies surged wildly as they launched destructive attacks at the light shield in front of them. The elixir weapons shone with endless light as a powerful aura surged. Once they landed on the light shield, they would definitely be able to break this unstable killing array. However, before the attacks could land, everyone felt a monstrous killing intent surging above their heads. The killing array had been activated, and waves of destructive attacks fell from above their heads. These attacks were fatal to them. In desperation, most of the Dan primes had to turn around to save themselves. They used the energy contained in the elixir weapons to bombard the destructive array attacks. Boom! The killing array was activated, and a destructive battle broke out instantly. under the horrified gazes of the cultivators on the periphery. The entire killing array formed an independent space and then blocked everyone's vision. However, at the last moment, when everyone's vision was blocked, they saw the corpses of the Dan Primes falling like raindrops. Finally, the killing array was formed, and the mournful cries were also isolated. The world regained its calm once again. Only the killing array on the ground, which was close to 10 miles long, was still operating and killing the enemies. As for what was going on inside the killing array, no one could see, but it must have turned into a hellish battlefield. Boom! Boom! Occasionally, a tremor could be heard coming from inside the killing array. This should be the late Dan Primes destroying the killing array, but the effect was not obvious. Time passed, but the world was deathly silent. Only the sound of the fluttering robes of the wind could be heard. In the distance, the gazes of the group of Dan Primes and Yu Fei constantly changed from the killing array to Zichin. Their faces were filled with all kinds of complicated emotions, including shock, horror, and disbelief. When they looked at Zichin again, his indifferent expression had completely returned to calmness. The shock on everyone's faces deepened. Trapping a group of Dan Primes in the killing array, and almost every moment there were Dan Primes from the overlords dying. This was undoubtedly a magnificent feat, but Zichen's face was filled with calmness. What did this prove? It proved that he did not put these Dan Primes in his eyes at all. Therefore, their deaths would not cause Zichen's expression to change too much. Terrifying, this is too terrifying. Could it be that after this battle they are going to establish their own force? Wu Lu's expression was also constantly changing, and there was a sense of loss and gain. On Zichen's side, other than Zichen's calm expression, Wang Qiong's face did not change much. As for the others, their faces were filled with excitement and shock. Among them, Wang Shan and the monk were the most excited. Their faces were filled with the most direct and naked excitement. Under Elder Mo's guidance, LV Peng personally set up this killing array. When he saw that the array had successfully trapped and killed the enemies, the excitement in his heart had reached the limit. This was because Elder Mo had previously said that if this array could trap the Dan Primes of the overlords, it would mean that his array attainments had reached a higher level. Compared to Ao Baichuan back then, he would not be inferior. Beside LV Peng, Wu Mo, Miao Kong, Qin Xing, Qin He, and the others were shocked. Although they knew that LV Peng set up the array to trap the enemies, they did not expect this array to be so terrifying. Not only did it trap the enemies, but it also killed many Dan Primes. As the killing formation continued, the number of core essences that died would increase. As for those Dan Primes who were prepared to die, their expressions were a lot more complicated at this moment. They did not know that Lord Zichin had such a method. Therefore, in addition to being shocked, excited, they also knew that Lord Zichin would not joke about their lives. Moreover, he did not want them to die. Within the killing array, the tremors continued. Moreover, the frequency was increasing, and the tremors were also getting stronger. This seemed to be a sign that the killing array could not be maintained and was about to be broken. At the base of the array, a large pile of high-grade primal stones was also losing their spiritual power at a speed visible to the naked eye. Every time the killing array was activated, every time a destructive attack was launched, it would absorb a large amount of energy from the primal stones. From the moment the killing array was activated, crisp cracking sounds could be heard from the base of the array. This was the sound of the primal stones shattering after losing all their primal stones. Moreover, as the array continued, the killing array's power became even stronger. The cracking sounds were also hurried, like the rapid and loud sound of firecrackers. At this point, the array that had been running for nearly 15 minutes had already consumed more than half of the primal stone's energy. The number of primal stones consumed had already reached as high as 10 million high-grade primal stones. Therefore, there was a price to pay for killing. However, if 10 million primal stones could kill 8 late-stage primal core experts, 20 mid-stage primal core experts, and 120 early-stage primal core experts, it would be an extremely worthwhile transaction. Open. Inside the array, seeing their own primal core experts fall one by one, the late-stage primal core experts went completely crazy. They held their primal core weapons tightly and used their strongest attacks to bombard the array. As for the attacks above their heads, they were fatal to the early-stage primal core experts, but they could not cause too much damage to them. However, these attacks were dense and concentrated. Therefore, they could not protect all of their primal core experts. At this moment, they could only protect a portion of their primal core experts before attacking the killing array with all their might. Although they did not understand the Tao of arrays, they knew that once the array's energy was depleted, the entire array would collapse on its own. Barbarians, I, Wei Peng, swear that when I get out, I will tear all of you into pieces. The late-stage primal core expert from the Wei clan roared hysterically. His face was filled with anger, and the anger in his heart was burning fiercely. His eyes had turned red because of his anger. Not only him, but the expressions of the other late-stage primal core experts were almost the same. Other than anger, there was more humiliation. Moreover, each of them had made up their minds that once they got out of the array, they would slaughter all the barbarians. The killing array in front of them could not kill the 8 of them. Even if all the primal core experts were dead and only the 8 of them were left, they could still slaughter all the barbarians. Under the protection of the 8 of them, the primal core experts attacked the killing array together with them. More and more violent explosions were heard. Under the powerful attacks, the high-grade primal stones in the array base were being depleted at a faster rate. The primal stones had been depleted as high as 4/5. During the attacks, the primal core experts from the overlords could clearly feel that the killing array was beginning to distort. Moreover, the destructive energy was no longer as strong. Quick, the killing array is about to break. The primal core experts were clearly delighted. Then, they increased the strength of their attacks. The killing array should be able to last for another 10 breaths. Outside, L.V. Peng said calmly as he looked at the distorted array. Zichen nodded calmly. Then he waved his hand and signaled for everyone to retreat. At the same time, he sent a thought to Longhu. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.